Hello and welcome back to Total Football. We're on the sofa, eating our pizza. Apologies if you hear any untoward noises, but it is dinner time, isn't it? So, I'm not going to apologise too much. Joining me is Patrice, it's Joe, it's Doogie. What a lineup we've got for you. And what a show. Liverpool against RB Salzburg away. It's all to play for. They need a point to guarantee safe passage to the last 16, don't they? However...
Come on, Salzburg!
Things could rapidly turn around in this group if Salzburg win. If Napoli don't beat Genk. People can qualify left, right, and centre. Basically, what we've got 10, 9, and 7 points for Liverpool, Napoli, and FC Salzburg, respectively. So we'll be keeping you. I'm eating. We'll be keeping you on top of all the scorelines as we progress throughout the night. Doogie, how can people get in touch, questions-wise, so we can, filter them out to these fine gentlemen?
Yeah, please do. So
tired.
get your questions in the comment section of this stream, and I will endeavour to ask the best ones to our beautiful panellists tonight. And on that topic, should we start off with the first one from Patrick Mace, who was asked, which English side would Erling Braut Haaland fit best?
Hello, heavy rumours he's going to Manchester United. Do you want to take this?
Yeah, I think Manchester United is the best fit for him. Obviously, I'm going to say that as a Manchester United fan, but I probably genuinely believe it as well. I think that Chelsea, he would be a great option at, in a similar way to Manchester United, to relieve some of that pressure from Tammy Abraham, in the same way that Martial can't seem to string together more than 5 games without getting injured. I think Tammy... There's now a lot of pressure on his shoulders. We saw when he dropped out with a little injury, they struggled to pick up the mantle. Olivier Giroud, I think, played in as his replacement and was just a shambles. So I think he'd be a great option at Chelsea. But at Manchester United, I think it's just the right time for him to go there. There's the connection with Solskjaer. There's Manchester United's desperation to get a striker in, and a striker who's going to be a regular starter for the club. And I think United will pay him probably a decent amount of wage, and whatever that buyout clause is, if that buyout clause is in truth 20 million euros, as is reported by a few of the European papers. So I think between Manchester United and Chelsea, the best 2 options for him. Tottenham would be a suggestion of mine, but I think he's too much of a second fiddle player behind Kane, not at Man City, and I just don't think he really works at Liverpool in the way they want their centre forward to work. So I think Man United or Chelsea are the 2 best options for Haaland in the Prem, and he'll go to Man United, in my opinion.
Are you in agreement, Pat? Because, of course, a lot of this is dependent on that release clause being true. Bild have reported it. It's not yet been confirmed. Some other rumours saying that only applies to Leipzig, of course, who come under the same umbrella. If it's not true, do you think there'll still be teams willing to shell out the 50, 60 million pounds it may require to pick him up?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, having done it on the Champions League level, that is going to raise your price tag, and everyone's aware of that. I mean, I think he's most likely to go to Man United, but I think they're actually the worst fit for him overall.
Whoa.
They've got the youngest striker of any of those clubs. Well, no, actually, he and Abraham are both young, but Rashford is a fantastic talent who is great as a centre forward. Even when he plays out on the left, he's still pulling into the middle a lot of the time. That is what he's meant to do, and I don't want Haaland in his space. Plus, when I look at Man United's attackers, I look at Martial, who can play through the middle or on the left. I look at Rashford, who can play through the middle or on the left. And what I think, instead, the easiest way to upgrade their attack is to add an outstanding right winger, and that is not Haaland. Now, you might argue Haaland's such a good talent, you have to go and get him anyway. But also you could say that, stylistically, there's a bit of an issue too, in that he'd be going from a really ball-dominant pressing side into a team which is actually at their best when they're playing defend and counter. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think he'd score plenty of goals. But if he could go to any of those teams and be great, you'd argue that actually City, who will at some point be thinking about moving on from Aguero, or Chelsea would probably slightly more make sense for his style of play. However, all that said, I think he'll go to United. I think it'll be a great success. The only question is whether he wants there to be an intermediate step. Because if, for instance, a German side can say to him, right, you're going to play every minute for us, and then we will, work out a reasonable kind of buyout clause in a couple of years' time, then I think that would make sense too. But actually, if I were Bayern Munich, if I were Juventus, or if I were Real Madrid and I don't fancy Luka Jovic, or even a Barcelona for that matter, I wouldn't let him go to Man United. I think if he ends up at Man United, it will be a failure by a bunch of Europe super clubs in the way that Ndombele going to Spurs was a failure, in that he should have gone to a Real Madrid.
Yeah, I think the issue for Manchester United, the same way you mentioned that stepping stone, is that there's big problems with his agent, who is notorious, obviously Mino Raiola, who has had some success and some major high-profile failings with dealing with Manchester United over the past 2 or 3 years, and has a very, very tumultuous relationship with Ed Woodward. So Ed Woodward has to find out a way of working with Mino Raiola that is going to see it be successful, because I don't think Man United are going to want to pay Mino Raiola the £15 million agent fee it's going to take. Like, that feels like that was a thing United would have done 2 years ago under Jose. I don't know what you boys think.
Yeah, well, potentially, but I just think you don't join United right now because they seem still a fair few pieces away from being a title-winning team once again. I feel like you could go to Leipzig or Dortmund and be a lot closer to titles in the next 2-3 years than you would be at United, in my opinion. And look at how they've developed talent. At Leipzig, Konrad Laimer, Nordi Mukulele, etc. At Dortmund, Dahoud, Akanji, Sancho, Hakimi. Like, I feel like for a 19-year-old, Germany is probably the place where you want to be right now. Over a United that are still struggling to find their identity and put up a consistent run of form.
But you don't become a superstar at those clubs.
I think you potentially do at Dortmund. I mean, look at Sancho. He's now a superstar.
But he's a superstar because he's linked with a bigger club,
Well, no,
That's fine.
in my opinion.
His
But that's what
output,
he's saying.
yeah, his output is that of an elite player in Europe.
Yeah,
isn't
definitely.
it?
He's a superstar footballer, but profile-wise, I'm talking about like
Yeah,
as like amongst those names.
and more specifically, German football is a great destination for young footballers now.
Yeah.
But Julian Nagelsmann will carry a certain amount of appeal if you're a
Definitely.
young player as well. So I think it might even be boiled down to, personnel. How many young players out there are yearning to play under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? I think seems like a decent guy. Of course, Haaland played under him at Molde, didn't he, for around 2 seasons? So he was there during his formative years. So they probably have a relationship. But if you're him, you're not just picking the league, or you're not just picking the team. You're picking the guy you think can take you to the next level. And when you've got the attention of all the top teams, I think he's probably willing to forego a certain amount of minutes, but not be a rotation option and play at Manchester United under the tutelage of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
He wouldn't be a rotation option at United and start straight away.
But that means that's to the detriment of one of Martial or Rashford, unless you change to a 4-4-2, right?
Well, I think in his ideal
Martial on the
headspace,
right,
I think Martial would end up getting shifted.
Yeah, I think so as well. But
And I love Martial. I really like Martial. Think he's a fantastically gifted player. But his injury record is just absolutely stinking. And
true.
it comes at the worst times for United. He can't put together 10 games. It's like 8 games, 3 games, 8 games, 5 games, 8 games. And that
People wonder why. So
even still, you're
consistent as well.
investing a lot of
doesn't
money.
work.
You're investing a
Doesn't
lot
work.
of money in order to create an 11, which automatically has a player playing below his best level. Whereas if you were to go and get an elite right winger, like say you could attract a Sancho, then you'd be creating an 11 where feasibly you've got a load of amazing young players who are all playing in their best positions. I agree. Like Martial, it makes sense for you to buy a striker. It absolutely does. But if you're then saying, oh, okay, well we go from having James on the wing to having Martial playing on a wing he doesn't like, you're like, yes, that is obviously an upgrade. However, it seems weird to build a
Detrimental.
squad which automatically has a flaw built into it. If
I
that
know what
makes
you mean.
sense.
I do know what you mean.
I just love Rashford so much as well that I just think
Yeah, I just think that United will be more willing to part with even if we have to pay the 60 million to get
Yes.
Haaland and not that than 130 or whatever it costs to get Sancho. Even though we don't care about what we spend, United will. I think in this new regime that we've got under Solskjaer, he's going to want to spend more on players that he knows that are immediately going to be reliable for him. And if he knows that Haaland's going to come in, he knows exactly how he's going to play him. I think it's way more of an option for him in January. Sancho's a summer signing, isn't it? I don't
And it
think
also
he's gonna be a January
depends
signing.
how big a star Haaland is as well. Like say Haaland turns up and he's like as good a young striker as I don't know. Like say he's like a great striker but like just below top level, like a very good striker. Then that maybe not as worth spending the money. But if you genuinely think he's maybe not an Mbappe level prospect, but one of the best young forwards that we will see in the next 5 years, then I think you go and get him regardless and say we'll work it out. Like so if United think he's genuinely that good, then the sensible thing might still be to spend the money, because you're like, that's a luxury problem to have. Like, how do we get Rashford and Haaland into a side? I guess I just look at it from a point of view with Arsenal, where we've built a front line which has tons and tons of talent, but actually poses problems on a week to week of how we balance it. Like you could say, like, is Lacazette a better player than Iwobi? Yes. Would Iwobi balance that front three better than Lacazette? Yes. So I don't know.
So like, other than us saying where it'd be a good fit, where do we actually think he ends up, Dukes?
I would probably say Leipzig, to be honest.
So you go Leipzig. I think he'll be a Man United player in January.
Really, that is really exciting. I would love it. But
Yeah, I think it could be a really exciting addition to that Leipzig squad, and I think they won't let him slip through the net if Timo Werner's departure is imminent, basically. So I'm going to go with Doogie on this, Leipzig.
Pat?
I think the richest club that goes in for him will get him, and that will probably be United. But he should go to Bayern or Real.
Interesting. Well, his numbers are certainly that of a superstar, aren't they? He could be the first player to score in his first 6 Champions League games if he bags tonight. He has 8 in 5 at the moment. He also has the record for a player under 21 in terms of goals to game ratio. And I believe first 5 appearances in the competition. He also claims that as well, doesn't he? He just pipped Diego Costa and Harry Kane to that post. So setting all the right sort of records, and definitely has the attention of the big teams. They're just coming out onto the pitch now, so the game's starting pretty imminently. Do you sneak in a few more questions before then?
Let's. So we've already talked about Salzburg's main man, but we've just seen him on screen. Jupiter Sats wants to know about Klopp, and he says, does Klopp's achievements in the last 12 months, i.e. this calendar year, make him the best manager in the world?
At the moment.
At the moment,
Did he say does Klopp's achievements or do Klopp's achievements?
He said does.
Well, get out then. I refuse to answer.
Right now, he's the best manager in the world, just because of how well Liverpool are playing. I think Pep Guardiola, overall, across the course of his career, and what he is capable of doing within the game, I think is the best coach. But Jurgen Klopp is the most on-form manager for sure right now, isn't he? Like, the two squads, there's not much to give either way between Man City and Liverpool, and Klopp's 14 points clear and has won Champions League in the last
Weirdly,
year.
I'd say City probably have the more talented squad player on a player-by-player basis, but like, it's a sign of a good coach to make the most out of what he's got, and I agree with you. I think Klopp's, on this year alone, definitely overtaken Guardiola on this year.
City's talent isn't as well distributed though as Liverpool's right now, especially given the injuries.
Yeah.
Like, so if City had a severe injury to a forward instead of Laporte, I think they'd be better off than they are. And they've had some bad luck as well. I don't know, really. Like, in a way, I see Klopp do less active management than I see, like, Guardiola or, say, a Pochettino or someone do. You know, like, actual kind of adjusting a game plan for a particular team. It does kind of feel like Liverpool go out and do the Liverpool thing in every single game. And that's not a complaint. Like, they're set up to do something really well. But it's quite rare that you see Liverpool, like, completely change the way they're playing or change their formation in order to play an opponent.
I suppose Pep's hand's been forced in that regard this season, hasn't it? Like,
Though he's always done that generally, and sometimes when he does it, it's to the detriment of his side. You know, in Champions League games where he's like, let's play Laporte left back.
very few people can find solutions like him. You're wondering if someone like Jurgen Klopp would have played Kimmich in central, Philip Lahm, in central midfield, or made Javi Martinez into a world-class centre back instead of a central defensive midfielder. So there is that, but I agree. I mean, at the moment, the game's just kicked off. By the by, we'll keep you updated on a minute-by-minute basis. Get your questions in the comments too, Doogie. If you're not subscribed. Jurgen Klopp, pretty hard. He's in.
Uh-oh.
Oh my God, Haaland.
That's an absolutely outrageous ball.
Good pace
Great
from Van
pace.
Dijk.
Got a bit lucky there.
It'd be interesting to see as the season goes on if Jurgen Klopp, any major questions are asked of his squad choice, his player choices. Should injury become a commonplace in the team? But it's not
if
at the
Van
moment, is
Dijk
it?
had got a Laporte injury, then we might be talking about this very differently.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
almost a like for like, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, like, that is one of the things with Liverpool. Like, in a way, Liverpool are the success of building a philosophy and building a squad to match it, rather than a manager who is just like able to overcome deficiencies in his squad. Like I still look at that's a
Oh my
foul.
God.
That is a foul.
A couple of nervy moments early on. RB Salzburg really putting the Liverpool defence under pressure.
That
Sorry,
really
Pat.
did look like he had his arms around him then, like before he pulls him. But I don't know, like so for instance, Pochettino last season, no midfielders. The way he managed to get around that issue, in a way like you can see what the manager's doing. Whereas often with a Klopp team, I'm kind of like, if Klopp's not in the stadium today, I'm not sure it'll make a difference because he set his team up so brilliantly. He coaches them so well. They'll go out and just roll over almost anybody they come up against. So it's a different style of management, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think Klopp has had more issues to contend with than people give him credit for. Not on the scale of Man City, but obviously Alisson missed the first few weeks of the season. Ox has only just come back from injury. Salah's missed quite a few games as well. Like they haven't had it completely easy. And now Joel Matip is out, who's probably was their best, well, at least their best centre back. And the early parts of this campaign, sorry, I'm getting a bit excited there. Salzburg having a few efforts on goal. So it's an interesting topic and one which I'm sure we'll revisit as the season continues. The Klopp versus Guardiola dynamic. Mr. Meaty Chunks on that topic is actually asked, who is Liverpool's most influential player this season, or who have you been most impressed with?
Gini Wijnaldum, maybe? Love Gini Wijnaldum. I think he's been incredible
I'd say
all
before the
season.
injury,
But
Fabinho.
probably Fabinho, yeah. But he's obviously been out for the last month or so, hasn't he?
What about old Sadio?
I would say, Sadio,
Oh my God, I forgot Sadio.
when he rotates
Sadio.
the forward line. Oh, Salzburg testing Alisson here in the opening exchanges. That's
Have
three,
him.
that's
Have
3
him.
or 4 shots in the first 2 minutes. And the man we were just talking about on the ball now, Sadio Mane. I mean, when he
forgot he existed.
when he rotates his team, Sadio Mane remains, doesn't he? Sadio Mane's fitness levels are absolutely incredible, and he just continues to score really vital goals. I think his goals to points ratio is higher than the other two combined at the moment, isn't it? In terms of winning his team points, yeah. Robertson to Trent Alexander-Arnold. Robertson taking a leaf out of Trent Alexander-Arnold's book there because it's normally the way
That's
around, isn't it? Like
outrageous.
that cultured cross-field ball where he cuts across it. I would say Sadio Mane.
Yeah.
And because Liverpool haven't kept a clean sheet this season, they haven't kept a clean sheet in the
There we
Champions
go.
League yet. Neither have
my.
Salzburg actually, which when these two teams feature, it normally makes for a great game. Let's hope that's the case this time. But
Yeah, that game at Anfield was awesome.
yeah, the defence nowhere near as sort of relied upon as last season. Now the team's a bit more coherent in total. And they weathered that storm, like you said, without Alisson. That wasn't absolutely catastrophic, was it? No. So I'd say Sadio. What about you, Deuce?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with Sadio. I'm really interested to see how Naby Keita does in the next. Oh, Milik. So yeah, Napoli are already 1-0 up. So even more
Napoli are now
pressure.
top of the group on 12 points.
Yeah, even
Liverpool
more
second.
pressure on Liverpool tonight. But as I was saying, really more. I'm very excited to see how Naby Keita does in the next few weeks and months because you feel like now it's his time to really nail down a starting place in that Liverpool midfield. He played really well against Bournemouth at the weekend, but it's one thing doing it against Bournemouth. Can he do it on a big Champions League night like this? Because he finished the end of last season very well, then picked up another injury. And his Liverpool campaign's just been so stop-start.
Oh, good save there.
Liverpool are
from
becoming the long
Stankovic.
ball masters. We saw Henderson do it at the weekend, Van Dijk the weekend before that, and I think this one's Lovren, who did it 3 weeks before that,
Yeah.
that long ball, with another long ball over the top to Salah. Salah's in behind, one-on-one with a goalkeeper, gets a shot off his right foot. It's a great save.
Well,
Gone out for a corner.
and
But long ball masters.
And we talk about, there being a certain amount of tactical kind of fluidity in the team. It's nice to see that they can mix it up
Yeah.
and just go direct. As the other side,
Well, that's
that must keep you guessing, yeah.
For Klopp, it's obviously something he's worked on, isn't it? That he's seen teams press really high to try and stop them coming out, and he's able to get in behind using the pace, and it's worked unbelievably well last 3 weeks.
Lovren turning into Benucci.
Yeah, and Jordan Henderson at the weekend. turning into
Henderson's
Pirlo.
passing
Oh
just
my
improved
God.
so much. Here we go.
Sadio
Right
Mane inside the box.
Salzburg have had an absolute honker.
Well, in the opening 5 minutes, we must have seen
Oh, my word.
Still on.
seven efforts. The camera,
Liverpool are.
even the cameraman didn't anticipate that staying in.
Oh, clear the ball.
What's happening, Joe?
What's Haaland doing at right back?
That's a.
Basically, Liverpool have just had a really, really strong spell of possession and chances, but nothing came of it other than a Salah. That's a great touch, isn't it? Not the best finish though,
No.
and the keeper does well to save it. But yeah, Liverpool, bit of concerted pressure after Salzburg having the better of the first 5 minutes. Liverpool just coming back into the game, showing a bit of quality.
That's a bit of a loose header there from Lovren. We've had a question in from Captain Kirk7423, and they've asked, with Aubameyang and Lacazette unlikely to sign new deals, should Arsenal look to sign a striker in January? I think this probably makes sense if Pat, you go for this one.
If they could get a striker in January, but I don't think they will be able to. They might not even have a permanent manager in January. I think that Aubameyang will go next summer. Lacazette's still got 2 years on his contract at the end of the season, so I think he'll stay, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. Like, you'd rather keep Aubameyang, but if you can get big money for Aubameyang at the end of the year, and you will still be able to get big money for him, I think that's all right. Like, Martinelli looks much more like a striker than a winger in the long term. And obviously I'm not saying he's ready now, but like, it's good to have him. And you also have Nketiah, I suppose, for the future. Like, so I don't know, from my point of view, it's an opportunity to kind of rebuild the attack in a way that makes a bit more sense, that's a bit more balanced in terms of score.
No!
What a save!
Finish it,
save!
Oh my God!
Jesus Christ.
What a chance!
Oh my goodness!
Salzburg slaloming into the box there. Lovely back heel. Was that Hwang who was put in?
Hwang and Minamino both had efforts there. Unbelievable. Good save from Alisson, and
Great
then
save from Alisson.
and then it sort of came back out. I think it was Hwang.
He should have done better. I don't know why he tries the little dink to
Yeah,
finish.
I know, because there are so many guys behind. If it goes over Alisson, look how many people there are like on the line.
Why is he doing that? It's such a poor finish from. I think it's
sloppy from Liverpool.
Who is it?
Man.
It's Hwang.
Ooh.
Such a good chance.
Minamino comes in. The
that's
second
a good
save's
save.
good.
It's Minamino with the back heel and Hwang with the attempted clipped finish. You were talking
Great
about Aubameyang there. Would you take? I mean, and rumours of him going to Real Madrid have kind of lingered, haven't they? Would you take that proposed? I don't know if someone just made this up, to be frank. Jovic plus cash deal.
Yeah, probably depends how much cash. Like, I mean, I think if you could just get like.
Just wide!
What an effort!
Sadio Mane curling a
I think
30-yarder
the keeper
just
has
wide.
covered.
This game is hectic.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on.
7 minutes in, this is a scorcher of a game so far.
Oh,
Sadio Mane curling one just
No, you got to go
wide.
for it. But Robertson was going for the overlap as well, and very much free. But
Just an inch wide.
Not bad, man.
Go on, sorry, back to Jovic.
No. Like, I think that if you can, it does depend how much money it is. But yeah, if I could just take 70 mil for Aubameyang, maybe you do that. But if you can convince Jovic to come, and you probably can at this point because of the Real Madrid situation, then I think it would be a really sensible thing to do. Like, you're not going to get. You could go in for Haaland, but I doubt you'll be like the best option for him either financially or in football terms. So yeah, I'd be absolutely fine with that. Like, Arsenal fans constantly do this thing where they're like, we can't let Aubameyang go, we can't let Aubameyang go. But if you think that way, then at some point you will find that you've just got a 31-year-old player that you can't really do anything with because you've held on to him for slightly too long. Like, Arsenal need to be thinking about what's going to happen. And at least they've still got Lacazette, who is actually still a fantastic striker. He's got, I think, 5 goals and an assist in like 600 league minutes this season. Like, that is very, very good.
I'm not sure what Firmino is doing there. That was not very good.
I liked it. It was bold. It was very Salzburgian.
That was Haaland before with a fairly poor ball back in, and it meant that Salzburg were collecting it from the corner. And Firmino's just gone from giving it away to running it through Salzburg's midfield. There is no midfield in this game, apparently, and it's just end-to-end stuff.
I saw somebody on Twitter the other day describe Salzburg as a really dominant, great side that are always 2 passes away from giving up a one-on-one chance. Yeah, and it is true. Like, you look at them, and because they press so high and they really sell out to get amazing chances, they're quite Tuchelian. Like, then quite often you see a team just do a couple of passes and a guy runs through midfield and you're like, where is everybody? And they're all in the opposition penalty box.
They were pressing the 12-yard box.
It's great.
Feels like that could be pretty easy against Liverpool.
Going back to
that's a sick pass.
Going back to Arsenal very quickly. Now that you have Edu as the sporting
so dirty, man.
Edu as the sporting director, are you more confident of making signings in the absence of a manager because now he's been entrusted with signing the right profile of player? As in, do you think big moves will still happen even if you don't have a permanent manager because Edu's at the club?
I mean, I'm not sure it's really about Edu. Like, we didn't have Edu in the summer, but we had a pretty good summer transfer window. And I don't think the manager's really heavily involved now. Like, obviously, you need to recruit for a style, but I don't think certainly the rumours say it's not the case that like Emery didn't have that much say in transfers this summer, and I think that's probably the way it should be. So yeah, like I don't worry about it too much. Actually, the way that transfers went this summer, I'm a little bit concerned that Edu might change the way it went, because overall this summer,
It felt good, didn't it? Other than maybe
Louise was a little bit late, but if we'd got the Louise of 1 or 2 years ago, we just basically didn't know how much he declined. If it had been 1 or 2 years ago, Louise, I think it would have been a great window. And I still think Tierney was great. I mean, Martinelli looks like a fantastic signing for next to nothing. Like, overall, a good window.
Yeah.
The bad bit was selling Iwobi and then letting Mkhitaryan go out.
And I remember we were doing the deadline day, and that move came through, Pat, and that's exactly what you said. Like that almost ruined the window for you, didn't it? Iwobi leaving.
Well, you can see the way that it's like imbalanced our attack. Like, you've now got a situation where I think essentially Ozil has to play because he's the only guy who's like a ball dominant creator who can link the midfield and the attack, which is a massive problem. Like, you know, when somebody like Xhaka has a horror show like he did against West Ham last night because he's a dreadful footballer. He's not a dreadful footballer. He's a dreadful fit for the football we want to play, I guess. But
he's a dreadful athlete, really.
He's actually no, he's not. He's not.
His running is what lets him down at times. I think.
No, he's stupid. That's his problem. Like he's
getting an absolute drubbing here.
His stamina's actually very good, and once he's up to speed, he's fairly fast. But his acceleration's poor, and he doesn't know where he should be. What Arsenal need though is a manager who's going to tell their midfielders where to be. Like Arsenal's midfielders watch any game, and Arsenal's midfielders have no idea where they should be at any given time.
There is so much space in this game.
Talking of midfielders, Naby Keita is really growing in influence in this game, isn't he? He's starting to run the centre of midfield. That is what Liverpool fans would have wanted to have seen when they signed him. He was dominant at Leipzig, and he's being dominant in this game.
He was good last weekend as well, Naby Keita. Really, who was that against? Bournemouth, yeah.
Goal and assist. It was a really, really nice assist as well, wasn't it, for Salah?
He finally might be coming good.
Well, it's good for him and Mane, actually, that they obviously both know this stadium pretty well, right? They both came through this club.
Of course.
Yeah.
So kind of like coming home for them.
Who's that?
Back in their old stomping grounds. Liverpool just leaving Van Dijk back, apparently.
Yeah.
Dane Lovren joining the midfield there. Go on then, Duke. Have we got any more questions?
Yes,
As
we
Robertson
do.
gives the ball. Hey, this is
Cop-
chaos.
That's embarrassing.
Cop Kings 93, no surprise or no prizes for guessing who they support, has asked, do you think Liverpool could realistically go through this league season unbeaten? I actually took a bet with a Liverpool fan the other day that thought they were going to lose one or fewer games this year, and I was pretty
One or fewer.
So 1 or 0 effectively, and it sort of split the office about whether it was a good bet. I think they'll definitely lose 2 or more, you know, considering the amount of games they've got to play in the next. Sorry?
In all competitions?
No, in the Premier League.
Joe,
what do you guys reckon?
I don't think they'll go unbeaten. There's too many games coming in December for that squad to go unbeaten. But I could see them losing just one. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Like last year.
I just think that their defence is slightly too porous, and a few times they've got quite lucky to scrape a 2-1 win. I think particularly back to the Sheffield United game when Dean Henderson had a bit of a howler. I think Sheffield United pretty gutted not to get more out of that game.
There, yeah.
But I think at some stage they'll lose like a 1-0 or 2-1.
Oh, you're
and
right.
It'll be an awful game
They'll
against Man United
to
Anfield.
To navigate this congested Christmas period without losing. And obviously the reserves are going to play in the League Cup, so in all competitions most certainly. Yeah, you imagine they won't go through in that. It'd be a great story if they do. But they've got Leicester on Boxing Day, haven't they? And that
feels massive.
That is their most testing game in that period. In terms of volume, yes, it's testing, but in terms of quality of opposition, that is definitely their hardest game.
Leicester haven't been brilliant against the bigger teams, have they?
They have.
They've been very bad.
They have been good at home though under Brendan Rodgers.
And they only just lost to Liverpool in the return fixture.
And against Manchester
No,
United, I just thought they were a bit gutless against Manchester United away from home, and Chelsea in the first half. And really, in that second half, you were thinking the next time Brendan Rodgers does come up against one of the big traditional big six away from home, he's going to play like he did in this second half. Like,
you'd hope so.
Hamza Chowdhury eventually came off. James Maddison went into a central position instead of being on the left, and it was much better. But yeah, feckless against Manchester United, but decent against Tottenham since, of course. A few teams were decent against Tottenham in that period, and that's ultimately what cost Poch's
it'll be
job.
something like that. It'll be like a Jose Mourinho that really does a job on them, you know, or like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who's got a fantastic record against the top six and is just willing to sit back and absorb and then break them. I just think that one of the big six will eventually beat him.
Yeah, I think Klopp will be quite annoyed that he wasn't able to rest a lot of players in this game, because if they'd beaten Napoli in the last game, they would have already been through. Whereas now they've got to play a full-strength side in this busy period. Massive game, really tough game for them away at Salzburg, who have a phenomenal record. I think they're unbeaten at home this year. or they're unbeaten in the league full stop, but they're definitely unbeaten at home in the Champions League as well. So with the amount of games coming up, just feels like an unnecessary hard game for them.
The good thing about the Christmas period, though, despite the volume, they play some rubbish sides.
Yeah, they got
like
Carabao Cup, they got the Qatar.
There's no good
Club
teams
World Cup.
in the December run. It's all sort of like Brightons and teams like that.
Although Brighton,
Yeah, but Liverpool just roll them over like that sort of level team. Every time I watch Liverpool against a team like a Bournemouth or a Brighton or a West Ham, it's just a rip roll.
middling clubs that are trying to play football,
or that try to play a bit of attacking football. They just roll through.
That aren't going to be as defensively sound as Sheffield United. I like Brighton, but you imagine they face a similar fate to Bournemouth, where they open up. Yeah.
Mind you, Bournemouth are on a horrific run of form under Eddie Howe at the moment.
Do you boys, what do you think to the Eddie Howe to Everton rumours? Because he is an Everton fan,
Is he?
and apparently so.
That's random.
And he's in and amongst the favourites, isn't he? So, PVS, you think he'd do a decent job there? Do you think he's the right sort of candidate?
No. I don't really see why Eddie Howe's linked with bigger jobs, to be honest. He's like a nice guy. Like, he can coach some decent attacking football. He's never built a competent defence at any point in his managerial career. They've been pretty lucky to stay up a couple of times, and I like them. Like, I enjoy watching Bournemouth play, but Everton's issue is not their attacking players. Like, they've got tons of attacking players. They need somebody who can coach a competent defence.
Poor.
There are better candidates available. Like, if they could get like a Marcelino would be absolutely fantastic for them. And
Benitez, coach a competent defence and then just let that forward line run right.
Benitez would be great. Benitez is a much better manager than Howe. Like, I'm a really big fan of Benitez, actually. Like,
Benitez or Marcelino, though?
Probably Marcelino, just because he's a little bit more attacking, and they do have the power to do that. Like, they're not actually like a bottom of the league kind of club, like struggling to stay up. Like, Benitez feels like a better fit for like a West Ham right now. But that's a great tackle. But I don't know. I think when you're a club like Everton, if you want to get into the top 4 one season, you need a manager who can like do something like unusual that's going to give you that edge.
Yeah.
Like, you need your version of Chris Wilder or your version of Pochettino when he was at Southampton. And to do that, you'll probably need to take a gamble. So they might want to look at people like Roger Schmidt or like Jesse Marsch at Salzburg. Like, that would make a lot of sense to me, because you need upside in that position. You can't just get a guy who's going to make you as good as your talent, because your talent is 6th or 7th in the league.
I read quite an interesting article today about Everton's potential appointment. Apparently, Moshiri, their owner, wants a real Hollywood name, someone like an Ancelotti to come in. Kenwright wants a British appointment like Moyes or Howe, and Marcel Brands wants someone that's going to fit this sort of high-octane pressing style of play that he's trying to introduce. So there feels like that at the top of Everton, there's not much idea about what they're looking for long-term.
That was the struggle with sacking Marco Silva, right? Bill Kenwright wanted him out some weeks ago. Moshiri wanted to persist with him because he saw him very much as kind of his pet project. And Marcel Brands, I'm not convinced that all those signings were his during the summer, because there still seemed like a little bit of a conflict, didn't there, in terms of the squad building. But I think Marcelino would be interesting. I mean,
it's a great situation to come into as a manager, because the team's actually pretty good.
Yeah. What about Marco Rose as well? I mean, if he excels at Gladbach, Everton certainly have money, don't they, to throw at managers, especially in the ascendancy, and his kind of stock is going through the roof now, isn't it, with Gladbach top in the league?
Yeah, you like a little bit of a level too much.
I was about to
he can
say
aim higher than that.
Yeah, I was about to say, if they finish in the top, if he finishes in the top 2, even 3 in the Bundesliga, I think he'll have the pick of clubs.
Sure.
He's been linked with Dortmund already.
Sure, and we like him because he's a
Mane's in.
Good
save.
save.
And we like him because he plays a good brand of football. But look, Kovac has already been linked with the Everton job, and he's currently
Has
the
he? I missed that.
title holder, isn't he? So I mean, Kovac or Emery would kind of be sounder appointments, if maybe a little bit uninspiring in terms of looking for a bit of a wild card. But good question.
I think it might end up being Emery though.
I like that one.
Kate
Haig has asked a question concerning a player playing in the other early fixture tonight, which is Napoli-Genk, which Napoli are already 1-0 up. And they've asked, do you think Koulibaly moving away from Napoli is a good move for him? And where could you see him playing? Koulibaly, potentially on the move in Germany.
Yeah, definitely. Get out of Napoli while you can, I think. I think he should go to Chelsea. I think he'd be a great sign for Chelsea. I think they need a centre-back. I think they need a centre-back, and he'd probably be available for a slightly discounted fee, given the situation there. I like the Chelsea defenders, and Rudiger's certainly good, but injury-prone. I think Zuma and Christensen, they can't play together for sure. And then Tomori's obviously got a high talent level, but I think he needs that experience of a centre-back like Rudiger alongside him, and Koulibaly would definitely give him that. So I would go to Chelsea if I was Koulibaly, although 100% Man City should be just going in 70 mil.
That's a fantastic pass.
Some of their defence-splitting balls so far.
Koulibaly could be a transformative signing for Chelsea. I thought Haaland was going to tap that in there. Yeah, I think that was Hwang on the end of that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Minamino to Hwang. And then nearly finds its way through to Haaland.
It's almost
They do link up so nicely.
bit of a scuffed shot, but it almost turns out to be the perfect ball
pass,
for
exactly,
Haaland, but Alisson collects, and it is still very, very much end-to-end. A Liverpool attack just before that coming to an abrupt halt when Salah couldn't find Mane at the back post, but both teams committing an awful lot of men forward. This is a really good 20 minutes.
An enormous amount of spaces between men as well. Like both sides, like you feel can really get through with a couple of quick passes. We've already seen Salzburg put some dangerous through balls in, so it feels like there's plenty of goals coming.
Are the questions coming though, do you?
Yes,
because if they're not, then get in the comments below so this man can ask the rest of the sofa.
It's a very good point. So Kushagra Sashan has asked, have you seen any outstanding talent in this year's Champions League or Europa League from some of the unfancied sides like Genk, etc., that can move to top teams in the Premier League? And that's quite a long, difficult question to answer, Pat. But someone in this Salzburg team that doesn't get a lot of credit is Dominik Szoboszlai, and I know you've written about him a few times. What do you make of him?
I mean, he gets a reasonable amount of credit given that is he 19 yet?
He's really young, yeah.
Like, he's still very young. He's done a lot of pressing early on in this game, and I mean, he is a good presser and a good creative player as well. But he's still exceptionally young. Like, his goal return has been really, really good in the Austrian Bundesliga, but you'd expect him to get a couple more years seasoning first. Like, he was linked with Arsenal as a kind of Ramsey replacement, but he doesn't actually play that way. He's more of a conventional 10. Like, I think he'll definitely get a move somewhere. The guy really who you'd expect to move on is currently playing for Genk, who's Sander Berger, who
Liverpool were interested after playing them, weren't they?
Well, he was linked with Arsenal again 2 seasons ago. Then he was linked with Spurs. Absolutely enormous central midfielder. I think he's 6'5". Generally speaking, about 4 to 5 tackles and interceptions a match, and then a couple of dribbles as well. So
Mane's in.
What a ball from Salah.
Defender.
Just couldn't dig it out of his feet, could he?
Good defending. Like, so I think that Berger would be a really interesting central midfielder. You know, like Genk is where Ndidi came from, and Berger actually profiles a bit more rounded than Ndidi. He's not going to win the ball quite as much, but he's going to be able to dribble and pass more than Ndidi can. So that might be an interesting place to look. And Genk traditionally has produced a load of talent. So I think Berger would be a really interesting guy for a top side to look at.
I think for me, every time I've watched him this season, which is exclusively the Champions League, so I haven't watched any league again, is Osimhen
From Lille.
at
Yeah.
Lille.
Yeah.
I think he's got 2 in the Champions League, something like that. He must have. I think he's got 9 or 10 in Ligue 1 at this stage.
Yeah.
But
fantastic
he's
football.
such a bully. Like every time I've watched him, he's been fantastic.
Hit that.
Haaland.
Oh, it's a good save.
Good
Did
save.
so well then to put
Get the
that into
shot
his
off.
path.
What
Yeah.
foot is he? Haaland, left or right?
I
think
actually
he's
don't
left.
know.
I think he's left.
Because he takes that lovely.
Because he takes this, like, this is still under his feet.
Look at the
bit,
strength
just
as well.
wham.
Good save.
Right.
Good save by Alisson. But yeah, Victor Osimhen, I think he'll probably get a big move. He's obviously still very young, and Lille will sell if the right fee comes in, won't they? As we've seen with Nicola Pepe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
his
they're
is
quite
such
nicely
a,
set
his
up
is
for
such a
the future,
feel-good
Lille.
story as well, because he was at Wolfsburg, and I think he dislocated his shoulder and then got malaria.
Yeah, he did.
And then ended up going to Belgium.
Charleroi, yeah.
So really unfortunate for him. So it's good to see him profiting.
I mean, he's got 2 outstanding creators either side of him, hasn't he? In Jonathan Bamba and Jonathan Okone. But he's just been so adept this season at getting shots off inside the box, hasn't he? I think I remember reading one of your scripts, Doogie, where it's like 3 of his 4 shots are inside the box this season. When you've got a young guy who's finding, those sort of positions at such a young age, it bodes really well, doesn't it? I'm going to throw Danny Olmo into the mix, the former La Masia player, who's now at Dinamo Zagreb. Of course, they're in Atalanta's group, aren't they, in the Champions League? He was kind of pivotal to that victory over Atalanta at Dinamo's home ground. And he's just a really adept midfielder, all-rounder, really, really nice dribbler, good creative numbers. And reportedly Barcelona are interested in buying him back, but he's kind of I mean, to go to Dinamo at such a young age, I think he was 16, really revealing about his mindset. So I think he's kind of keeping his options open. I don't think he's in any rush to go back to the Catalans. So.
Yeah, they've got some interesting talent at Dinamo Zagreb. I think is he called Orsic as well? Got a hat trick in the first game week as well. Looks really promising as well. So plenty of talent there. And yeah, as Chris says, credit to taking the route to Croatia rather than struggling to get game time at Barcelona. Sam Goz has asked, who should Chelsea... Actually, no, we'll come back to Sam Goz's question because I actually think this one's more interesting. No offence, Sam Goz. Ollie is King has asked, has Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's week saved his Man United career, Joe?
Just before I do that, it's 2-0 to Napoli. Milik's got another, so it looks like at the moment they're flying through 100%. The top of the group, 12 points with the best goal difference. Back to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. No, it hasn't saved his job. I just don't think the board was ever going to sack him, whatever happened. At this stage, as I've said in loads of different shows, I just don't think it makes any difference who the manager is of Manchester United with the current squad. I think Ollie's probably getting as good as it is out of it. It's kind of a 6th to 8th place squad. There's no midfield in there that's got any real creativity without Pogba, and Pogba hasn't been fit for 4 months. Ollie is putting the best team he can out, and it's pretty mediocre in terms of personnel. What does Poch do if he comes in? Poch probably comes in, and I'm sure you'd see a new manager bump, but he's going to have the same problems with the midfield. He's going to have the same problems
What's he
with
doing?
that's poor, with some of the defenders. I just think it's pretty much as good as it's going to be at the moment for United. 6th place, fine. Yeah. Got no midfield. Get the midfielders in January, and then see what happens. But Ollie was not going to get sacked this early.
Do you boys agree with Joe that you don't think a change of management would, facilitate or get more out of these players?
But what is get more? Do you think that midfield is capable of finishing in the top 4?
I said 5th before the season started.
And where are we now? 5th.
5th, yeah.
So does it get better than 5th?
Which I'd say is actually better where it should.
In the absence of Fabinho, you could make that argument, I suppose, about Liverpool's squad to an extent, but they make up for it in other areas, don't they?
But their midfield's so much better than ours.
Yeah.
Fred and McTominay, like the
deficit.
Third choice behind them is genuinely Pereira.
It's definitely much larger. But I'm pretty unsympathetic towards Manchester United, finding themselves in this situation. But that doesn't really relate to the question, does it? So where do we think? What is a good finish for Manchester United then at this point, like in this season? What?
Oh, roll him in.
I don't know.
He's in.
Oh, hello.
Wang. Oh, it's terrible.
Good challenge, though.
Such a bad pass.
Got so lucky there. That was gettable.
United are going to finish probably between 5th and 8th, and that's where United deserve to finish.
What's the gap to 4th at the moment?
5 points.
5 points, yeah.
Which is not insurmountable, and depending on the personnel United get in January, if they got the right midfield personnel in, it's not an insurmountable gap.
Who are you linked to?
Playing through the middle.
We're
I
heavily.
saw Arturo Vidal.
No,
oh, here we go.
Oh, lovely.
Mo Salah.
Oh my God!
Wow, from Big Mo.
Extremely
miles there.
uncharacteristic from Salah there, because he's been put in.
What?
Brilliant play by Naby Keita.
Yeah.
Rolls in Salah, 8 yards out.
It's so far wide.
So bad.
It's like a good 3 or 4 meters
I don't know
wide.
how he's managed it. He's just totally got his bearings wrong, I think. He's just dragged his shot. It's just gone awful.
And a few moments before that, some great touches from Salzburg's number 45, Mwepu. Like, really nice one-touch football. But there's Naby Keita again, finding himself in that hole, in that space in central midfield. He's teed up Salah, like Joe said. Woeful effort. But it is just... I imagine we've had about 12 or 13 shots already in 29 minutes.
It's been a lot of fun.
Great game.
It's been a hell of a lot of fun.
Just to come back to that, what you just asked me then, obviously heavily linked with Emre Can.
Oh, nice.
For not an awful lot of money. I think the reported fee was about 12 million euros, something like that. I think that'd be fine. Be a decent enough signing, not a particularly old player,
Good player,
and would do a job and be an upgrade on everybody except Pogba, who doesn't seem to be able to get himself fit at the moment. So Emre Can wouldn't be the worst option.
Still a good age as well.
Continue
26.
Continue to be linked with Christian Eriksen, which would be a good signing, but I just think he would be a bit of a problem in terms of wages, because he's going to ask for a lot to come to United right now.
That's outrageous.
And I don't think United are in the mood to pay big wages post Alexis Sanchez and get held over a barrel in the same way.
Are you looking in the midfield area? Do you think you need more of a DM style midfielder? Are you looking for someone to link the play with the attack?
Well,
what are you looking
Ollie was
for?
talking about midweek. He wants to, I think, TV2, which is I think a Norwegian station, which is 2 midfielders and a striker.
Oh, nice.
And you'd imagine one's a defensive midfielder and one's a creative 10. Because those are the problem areas for United.
But I think Eriksen, I'm not sure about the wage thing because he's he's been the architect of his own downfall for that move to Real Madrid, and that he was sitting on the fence.
Get him on a good wage,
sitting on the fence over a United move. Real Madrid didn't come in for him. It cost him that United move, didn't it, in the summer? Because United, of course, sent people down to North London. And then he's been so poor this season that I'll be surprised if Real Madrid come back in for him. So he might be between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I mean, I would love him, don't get me wrong. If you could get him out there for 25, 30 million pounds or however much Tottenham want for him in the end, I think he'd be a good signing. But I think what you'll see is him opt to run his contract down and then take a larger wage in the summer.
Yeah, especially as Juventus are apparently sniffing as well.
From a club like Juventus or maybe PSG or somebody like that, where he's going to get a bigger wage because he's chosen to run his contract down. So that's probably what will end up happening. And United are clearly trying to get James Maddison out of Leicester.
With good reason.
That's obviously been a priority for Manchester United, and they might well decide to eat shit for 6 months and play Pereira, Lingard and Mata in there to try and lure James Maddison in the summer, despite the fact he's going to sign a new contract at the club. He's currently earning £50,000 a week. I think the new contract takes him to £75,000 a week, which is a good amount of money for him. But that feels more like it's saying well done to Maddison for some fantastic form than it is you won't be allowed to go anywhere if a £100 million bid does come in, which I think United would have no qualms about offering. I don't know what you guys think about Madison's United in the summer.
I mean, in the summer, maybe, but I mean, it depends where they finish and then where that leads to.
But does it matter where United finish?
If Leicester finish second, then the owners might start to change their objectives, might start to change how much they're willing to pump into the club during the summer. Brendan Rodgers has signed a new long-term deal, so they might be gearing up for some big transfers in that regard. In terms of like him signing that might mean that they're going to back him to a more significant extent. Now he's doing so well.
They don't want to let Ben
They don't want to let Ben Chilwell go. Probably in the same period or a 6-month period as they let Maddison go. No, the player would no doubt want to go to Manchester United. But whether Leicester let that happen a year after letting Maguire go
but they reinvested
to the same club.
If they reinvest smartly, they might think to themselves, we could take that 100 and the 80 we got from Maguire and we could build an even better unit. I think if £100 million, in the same way Dortmund think it quite regularly, don't they? I think if 100 to 120 came in, it's...
But a lot of Rodgers' success has been dependent on James Maddison. I mean, he's been pretty fortunate with how much Sionku has kind of...
Great chance here for Liverpool, by the way.
Fitted in, hasn't it? Who's on this free kick? Salah then from 21 yards, and it's straight over.
I think his best game for him.
I think maybe Emre Can comes in January and Haaland as well. Those two players for a combined 60, 70 million pounds, and then United reassess and try and get a really talented attacking number 10 in the summer. That'd be my
totally fine.
That'd be a juicy January. I'd be well up for that. Nick Apostolidis. Sorry, I'm going to do that again, Nick. Nick Apostolidis. Sorry, I'm not so good on my Greek pronunciations. I said, what do you see happening to Carlo Ancelotti this season and after the season ends? Pat, he's been linked with Arsenal, he's been linked with Everton. Do you want to see Carlo Ancelotti come back to England?
Not really. I like Carlo Ancelotti, but
Would you want him at Arsenal? Is a better question, possibly.
He wouldn't be a good fit for Arsenal. He's a good manager, but Ancelotti has never been a guy who, I don't know, he turns your bad defenders into a competent defence, or he whips your, underrated attack into a goal machine. That's not what he does. What he does is he takes slightly flawed squads or squads that are dysfunctional, where everybody's up in arms about something, and he makes them coherent. He gets a good atmosphere around the club.
Which is weirdly what's happening now at Napoli, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, well, the problem is at Napoli you've always got the De Laurentiis guys to deal with, and they're always a bit of a nightmare. But generally speaking, I really like Carlo, but Carlo actually needs a super club. Arsenal don't have a squad. If Arsenal just don't have the squad for Ancelotti, that's as simple as it is. He'd be much better off going back to a PSG or to Real Madrid or something. I don't know. Though I wouldn't change manager either of those clubs right now. So
has anyone asked you who your dream appointment would be at the moment?
At Arsenal? I mean, mine would be wait till the summer and try and get Marco Rosa. Or failing that, Tuchel, I think. those would both be fine with me. I don't really mind. I don't really mind an Arteta or something, but I think it's a hard ask to bring them in at this stage of the season. Like, it just seems weird to me to say, right, okay, we're gonna go out and get a manager who we know is not going to be the best possible guy available in the middle of the season, rather than just waiting till the summer. Like,
So you wouldn't get Arteta on a temporary basis or something?
You're not going to do it.
What do you
Why
mean?
would he say yes to that move?
What do you mean?
Well, as in, like, would you trust Ljungberg on a caretaker basis to the end of the year?
Why not? Like, I mean, the top four's gone. Like, points wise.
Do you think it's gone?
Yes, points wise, the top four
They're
is
a long way
gone,
off now, aren't they?
and I mean, don't get me wrong, Arsenal could now start playing better than certainly Man United, certainly Leicester, not Chelsea or City or Liverpool. Like, that's definitely within their grasp. But even if they did start playing as well as Leicester or Man United now, like, the points gap to Leicester is absolutely enormous. Like, you not only need to be better, you need to be luckier, like, down the stretch. So I think that's basically gone, and that doesn't really bother me too much.
And if Arteta comes in, he comes in on a 4-year contract. He doesn't come in on 6 months.
Yeah. So what you do? So in that sense, like, he and Ljungberg, like, don't have particularly different CVs, really. Like, when you say, "Oh, would you trust him to do it?" Like, yeah, it's a risk, but I mean, like, it's kind of a risk. Whatever
find
we do.
someone.
Oh, yeah,
So-
Arteta's
I
not-
also think
yeah.
it's odd. Don't know if you guys agree, but the Arteta, like, things are set up from at Manchester City. That's why he's considered such a viable candidate, because it's a continuation of Pep's ways, right? But that
He's not the front runner though for manager.
for,
at City,
for
is
any
he?
for any other. He's not. I don't think he would be the front runner for any other job outside of that as well. I've been not led to believe, but I imagine he'd be in the top 3 for City, and they have to really,
Oh, no, I
really
think-
like consider him very strongly.
I think so too, but it's Van Bronckhorst who's like
Yeah.
the rumor is all Van Bronckhorst is being groomed as a successor, and maybe Arteta the one after him.
So there's a step in between, right? I mean, that makes more sense.
Well, I think you wouldn't be surprising if he went to like
Yeah.
NYCFC or he went to rather Red Bull,
But
whoever it is, and we went to Girona or something first.
But it's odd that he'd be in that situation with City when I don't think he should be anywhere near the top three candidates for another team in the top 6.
Other than Arsenal, because of the historical
history,
links.
yeah.
And
that-
Everton.
But that's special though, isn't it? Because City know whether he's good or not. So for instance, like, you say that, like, oh, he shouldn't be in the top 3 for them, but that's because, you know, a Liverpool or a Man United or whatever don't really have that much information on how good a coach he is. Whereas City, they see him every day. It's the same way that, you know, people sometimes say, why is X person taking penalties for X club?
What a pass.
That's a ball.
Well, he's falling over.
Yes.
Don't think Minamino was expecting
Haaland's not
that.
quite
Haaland's struggling to get
quite
into
in the
a bit,
game
isn't
at the
he?
moment.
Yeah.
He's doing quite a messy performance though, where he like walks off the ball and then when the ball gets anywhere near him, he springs into life. But yeah, I
3-0 game over at Napoli. Milik
Hat-trick
hat
for
trick.
Milik.
Milik
Wow.
hat-trick.
Milik's
Fair
38
dues.
minutes hat trick.
And even if Salzburg won tonight, they needed Genk to get something from that game in order to qualify, right?
No,
No,
Salzburg
no,
can
no,
qualify tonight if they win.
If they win.
Oh, well, I got that completely wrong, so fair enough. Still need to read the crib sheet, to be perfectly honest. We any more questions, Duke?
Yes, we do. Eric Aids, 55, has asked, who do you think the favourites are for this season's Champions League, the big one? Anyone want to go first?
Why don't you go first, Dukes?
Okay. If Liverpool get through this game, I'd comfortably say Liverpool. Just on the basis of their incredible home record. I don't think they've lost at home in the Champions League since October 2014 against Real Madrid. It's quite fortress doesn't really even do it justice at Anfield. And yeah, incredible over 2 legs. We've seen that over the last few years, not just in the Champions League, but in the Europa League in 2016, etc., etc. But if they don't, then I said Barcelona before the start of the year. I'm just getting a little bit. I'm sort of going, getting even stronger in that opinion with the way that Messi's playing in the last couple of weeks. Suarez,
Oh my God.
Griezmann's playing a lot better in the last.
oh, why has he tried to do that?
Why did he try
Was that Mwepu again? Running
Incredible
with the ball.
play.
He's playing really well in this game, actually.
So Haaland's just sort of steps over.
Oh.
I don't know whether he was trying to take it in his stride
It
or
was
step
Under his
over
feet
it.
a little bit, wasn't it? And he kind of tried to
Slightly behind
slide
him,
out
but yeah, it was
from under.
another good chance on the counter-attack that's gone begging at the feet of Haaland. But yeah, I'm going to go with Barcelona and Messi, unless Liverpool get through this game.
I might go for Juventus.
I'd rate so many teams ahead of Barcelona, man.
I might go for Juventus. Just,
Cheeky.
both. I know that Ronaldo's not having a good season, but just always seems to turn up in the crunch moments. And I just think that Sarri, despite having what feels like a slight dip recently, after the Europa League run he put in last season, that he might well be able to replicate something like that with such a deep squad, because it is massive, isn't it? And
Below
Matthias
City,
de Ligt has to find some proper form at some stage. So
He's actually been a lot better recently domestically. I mean, they lost that game, but they were unbeaten before that, and he had an absolute.
But they've been
howler,
playing.
didn't he,
They've been
with him
playing
before.
poorly, haven't they? I think.
Yeah, 12 of their victories have been by a one-goal
One goal, it's
margin.
like lots of
Which,
2-1ers.
but you associate when Allegri does that, everyone's like, "Oh, Allegri has this ability to." Wow,
But I think
Wepo's absolutely connected with that.
the point of bringing Sarri in was to not do that.
Oh, I agree. They've
Yeah.
probably not like progressed or shifted the philosophy in a more meaningful way. I think
Really, I think they've
expected
progressed a
more.
lot this season.
From
But
what I've,
results-wise, they haven't.
from
Yeah,
what
but that's
I've,
not his fault.
from what I've watched, they have. I mean, there's been certain games like recently, was it against Sassuolo, the draw where
Yeah, 2-1.
they had an expected goals of 4 to 0.6. I think that was the first time I've seen them be like significantly unlucky. But in the opening 10 games of the season, when I was paying a little bit more attention, like even the victories against Parma, the victories against I think it was Fiorentina. They were like, and that was a really exciting game actually. They were by the scruff of their neck, and it wasn't through playing pretty football,
They were extremely dominant against Inter though. Like I mean, and
which is impressive.
really
sure.
the only game I've seen them kind of outplayed this season was against Atalanta. Like the rest of the time, I think they're certainly better than they were last year, but I still think there are issues with that squad, notably the lack of Chiellini. But
Yeah,
God,
that's been a big one, hasn't it, this season, Chiellini?
yeah, there are so many teams though. Like I mean, with Barcelona, it's always just a bet on how superhuman is Messi going to be. Whereas I
Seems
mean,
pretty superhuman.
because
at
if
the
you
moment.
actually looked at other sides, like Bayern are better than Barcelona by any stats and by the eye test.
But does the
PSG
manager have
certainly are.
Do you think Hansi Flick can do?
No, not really.
I mean, that bubble's burst already, hasn't it?
I'd bank on PSG more. I think PSG are quite interesting candidates.
Yeah,
They've got an
depends if they can get Neymar back and fit and fine in the
I'm
Champions League.
not sure whether man-to-man I agree that Bayern are better than Barcelona, to be honest.
No, it's not about man to
Hello, Haaland's
Like-
in though.
Do
Talking.
you mean as just playing
Haaland's
as a
in
better...
1-1.
Oh, here we go.
Haaland to Minimo. Goal!
Oh, just wide.
That was a really weird attack because it looked like
Haaland
Haaland
was
held.
about 4 yards offside,
Yeah.
wasn't he? What's the lino doing?
Haaland looked offside. Then two looked like Haaland had scuppered their chances by taking a little bit of an odd touch. He put it behind him. He's onside. It looks like.
Maybe.
Hard to tell from that angle, isn't it?
A bit of a weird touch off the top of the thigh, and then he managed to drag out to Minamino, who just pulls it wide.
He's an unconventional looking footballer, isn't he?
Oh,
What, Haaland?
Haaland,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's not like, sometimes he's not that aesthetically pleasing, is it?
No,
He's a
it's
bit
like-
like all limb.
Bit gangly, like he hasn't quite come to terms
Like
with how
Tammy
big he
Abraham.
is. Yeah.
Tammy Abraham's
You
legs
can't-
are like spiraling away
Doesn't
from
quite
him, like a
understand
Catherine
how
wheel.
large he is.
Yeah.
It's like the Isle of Man logo,
Yeah.
you know, where it's like 3 legs like stuck together.
But you do forget how young he is for that body type, don't you? Like he
Yeah.
probably isn't himself used to that being that large.
I've seen some
Yeah, he's
videos of
probably
him
quite
in the
unusual
youth
side.
sides. You know, when he played against Honduras and scored, was it 9 goals or
Oh,
8
for
goals
Norway
or-
under 20s.
or something. He's been this size for a long time, and it is scary that he could actually, broaden.
Yeah, because he's not bulky, is he? He's quite lean.
But-
I think he's gonna get massive
but-
wherever he goes.
But you're right.
He's gotta
Like,
be careful
he's
not
got to
to.
take advantage of that body.
Bit of
body
Manchester
type,
food or
some
fill
type.
out.
Yeah, I mean, Salzburg have dragged themselves a little bit back into this, haven't they, the last 5 or 10 minutes? Because Liverpool had a really, not a dominant spell, but were in control for
been a good half. We
15,
could do a goal, though,
15
couldn't we?
20. We could do with a goal, indeed. We could do some more questions as well, dude.
Yeah, Chaps Chicks has asked, Milik hat-trick, where do you guys see him in the sort of European ranks of strikers?
You've always been a massive fan of it, haven't you, Pat?
He's an amazing striker. I mean, his numbers the last couple of seasons have been not just good, but like genuinely world class.
Frightening, this.
Like you like over 1 XG and expected assist per 90, like that kind of thing. The other thing is, no one's ever going to buy him though because of his knee injuries. Like it's
Yeah.
just the way it is. Like so he's going to be one of those guys like I mean, he's better, but he's going to be one of those guys like Callum Wilson who will always say, "Oh, it's a pity he didn't get to go to a bigger club, but nobody took a risk." Like he's a great striker.
He's been streaky as well this season, hasn't he? Like, owing a little bit to fitness and injury. Like, I think Dries Mertens was pretty much the sole centre forward in the opening sort of 4 or 5 games, and then Milik went on a spell where, for the first time in his career, a little bit like Danny Ings, completely different strikers, but scored for the 4
touch.
consecutive
Put him in!
games
Put him through!
for the first time in his career. And talking of goals,
No.
we could
Right.
it's
Minimo's rushing it, isn't he? He's
They've
rushing.
been the better side.
I
Salzburg,
feel like,
though
yeah,
Liverpool
I feel
have had the
like
biggest
sometimes
chance.
their final passes. But yeah, I agree.
they've been really,
That
both
Sa-
teams have been great at getting into the
Salah.
final third.
No
right?
one's created
Trouble.
a chance as good as that Salah moment, though.
Oh,
here we go!
Salah.
Oh, square it!
Oh my word!
Why hasn't Keita squared that there? Firmino's looking on absolutely perplexed. Keita could have squared it. It would have been in. Salah put him in, looked like a decent attack.
Keita should have scored.
Stankovic.
Keita has to score. He goes through 1-on-1. If he shoots, that's a good save.
That's good from
No,
Stankovic.
it's a great
Stankovic,
save.
for
I'm
the
not
second
sure
time
whether-
in the game, Stankovic has done well.
Yeah,
he's
I
out
feel like
really
was
quickly,
his
isn't he?
path blocked for the pass as well? Maybe he had to go for
It's
it.
hard to tell.
Class by
Always,
Salah,
I can't
isn't
see
it?
from that angle.
You always
but-
think it looks like the pass is really easy, and then it's hard to say.
Brilliant by Salah though. That left
Yeah,
drag
it's
with the left and
phenomenal
move with the right.
You did a We Need to Talk episode on Napoli, and there's apparently supposed to be a massive exodus in January. We've already touched upon Koulibaly, but would you take a
That is
punt
a
on,
sensational
not
header.
necessarily Manchester United, but would you take a punt on any other of their players, given their current situation?
Probably not Milik because of that knee history, as Pat's already mentioned. And I think he's probably one of the ones that they're not as willing to part ways with. Half time, by the way, 0-0. I think they're more likely to part ways with Dries Mertens, from all accounts. He seems to have been one of the leaders of the revolt. So I think that's one of
The revolt
reasons
was
they
just
want him
not
gone.
going to this team bonding thing as well, right?
It was, but then it was subsequent to that at a number of training sessions, the way they were treated by the fans. A few of the players had their houses broken into by fans, and fans kind of holding their wife, and stuff like that, and spray painting cars. And Mertens was very vocal against the ultra groups, so I think that he's
Right,
more
okay.
likely to leave than a Mertens. But I think Alan would be, despite the fact he's
The fans,
not
the
quite
fans
the player
are
he
gunning
was
for him on
2
Twitter.
seasons ago. He was one of the most affected by the fans. I think his car was the one that got vandalised. His house got broken into when his wife and his children were
women?
when his wife and his children were there.
Jesus.
And I think the fans went for him in a training session as well when they hosted the open training session. So I think Alan's quite likely to leave. Obviously a fabulous player, and whoever picks him up for circa 50 million euros,
Yeah.
I think could have had a little
I
bit
mean,
of
if
luck
he
with the
can
Napoli
recreate that
situation.
form that he did under Sarri, most certainly, and he again, he was someone that you really liked, wasn't he? And when Sarri kept finishing second, he was the heartbeat of that side along with Jorginho.
Yeah, though I think the by far the kind of most attractive prospect in the squad is Fabian Ruiz. Like, he's the guy who's linked with everyone right now. City, Barcelona, Real Madrid. If Man United are looking for an attacking midfielder next summer, he'd be perfect because he's going to be a more complete player than almost anybody you could get in the 10. Like, maybe you really want Maddison, but Ruiz is going to be cheaper and he's going to give you at least as good a creative performance, while he actually has much more of a midfield defensive presence. So I think Fabian Ruiz is actually one of the best young talents in the world.
Yeah, he's really weird as well, isn't he? Because he's like
He's big.
a bit of like an 8-10, but does defensive work like you said. But yeah, he's massive.
Yeah.
He's so languid.
He's like 6'1". I don't know. I mean, like, I think he's quite dynamic. Like, he's certainly capable of moving the ball through the midfield. He's a good dribbler. Like,
Great ability.
he's not languid in the way that like Jorginho is, but he's but yeah, I think that he'd actually make more sense for you than a Maddison, purely because he is going to bring that defensive work. Like, at Betis, you were looking at 4 tackles and interceptions a game. Now at Napoli, you're looking at over 3 key passes a match. Like, that is an unusually broad range of talent in one player.
But yeah, I think there'll be a fair few players up for grabs unless the situation gets quickly resolved, which doesn't appear to be happening. So stay tuned for the Napoli vibes.
Their form has been pretty bleak as well. They definitely need something to change there. A lot of people asking in the comments, get your questions in there, about where Haaland should go. We did a big section at the start of the stream, so while it's half-time, when you go back, check that out. We did a good 10 minutes. I said Leipzig, Chris said Leipzig, Joe said Man United, and Pat, I can't remember what Pat said. But anyway, go check that out. But
Pat said Real Madrid.
Pat said Real Madrid. Patrick McElliott in the comments has asked, which club suits the signing of Sancho most? Another player that's potentially linked with a January move. I think I know what Joe's going to say. Pat, why don't we go to you first? Where do you want to see Sancho?
Well, I'm actually going to say what Joe would say, arguably. Like, I think suits him the best. I would say Man United.
Where would you like to see him?
Arsenal. I mean, no, I don't know. Where would I like to see him? I quite like seeing him at Dortmund. Like, I don't have a particular issue with that. I think PSG would be fine, but I kind of want to see him play more, and I'm not going to watch Liga 1, let's be honest. Yeah, I don't know. He'd be also fun at like an Atletico Madrid, but there's no way in hell he goes there.
What about the Liverpool links?
There are minutes at Liverpool to soak up, and they will be moving people on at some point, inevitably. But it is one of those things where it's just like, I think I'd get him if I could get him, but I don't know why you go out and make such a concerted play for somebody who will basically require you to change your formation, and it could potentially see a little bit of disharmony in a squad which has actually been notable for its harmony over the last couple of years. I think in the middle of a campaign like this, where short of something unbelievable, short of some weird kind of zodiac astrological, catastrophe, like something ordained in the stars, like you're gonna win the league. So I feel like you don't do anything to kind of fuck with your juju,
especially in January,
going into the second half of the season.
For sure. I mean, in terms of who needs him the most, Chelsea. But well, at least they did at the start of the season. But even now, Williams looked great under Frank Lampard in recent weeks, hasn't he? He's been one of the most consistent performers.
Chelsea, you are right though. Actually, yeah, I'm wrong. Ham was right. Chelsea.
You bring him in January, and he's going to be. He won't necessarily play for 6 months, but then you've got to phase out one of your most consistent performers this season, who's probably viewed as a bit of a leader in the team. He's one of the more senior players in what the starting 11 is a very young starting 11, isn't it?
Come on, you've been Willian instantly.
I don't think instantly, but I think if you tell Sancho, like, you're going to be rotating with Willian for 6 months and then you are our guy, I think he probably
be like, get out, Willian.
I think he
contract cancelled. Go to Barca.
What happens to Hudson-Odoi and Pulisic?
Well, Hudson-Odoi normally plays off the left, right?
I think that I think, in my opinion, in his ideal world at the moment, if he could have him all fit, I think he would probably play Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi on the wings.
Yeah, you might be right. But...
Yeah, Jadon Sancho certainly.
Obviously, he would usurp them instantly. But if I was Hudson-Odoi, I've just signed I've just signed £100,000 a week contract at Chelsea for 5 years.
Pulisic can play as number 10, right? And then, but then Mason Mount is missing out. But then, can Mason Mount play as an 8? Probably, but then Kovacic is doing so well there at the moment, so it definitely adds a layer of complexity. But just like with was it what you were saying with the Haaland situation? If you can go out and get a youngster for a set price because of extenuating circumstances at Dortmund and at this point, you go and do it if you're Chelsea, because I think come the summer, if he sustains his form, he's going to cost 10-20% more, and there's going to be a hell of a lot more clubs in for him. So Chelsea really need to. I think Chelsea need 2 or 3 players to sustain like their current form or their Champions League ambitions, whereas other clubs around them are going to get better, and they can only get worse. I mean, that sounds pretty dramatic, but I do think that is the case, and they're kind of going for a little bit of a rough spell now, aren't they? But so I think Chelsea. What you're saying? Did you say Man United? Sorry.
No. I think he should probably just stay at Dortmund.
Okay.
But yeah, Chelsea seems like the most likely destination right now, given he is a Chelsea fan, and like you say, they've got a lot of money to spend after.
Such a good chance.
After a summer of no spending. But the place he's going to guarantee starting every game in his favourite position is Manchester United. They don't have a right winger other than Dan James, who was obviously brought in to be a squad player. He wasn't brought in to be the starting right winger that he is right now. It's happened out of necessity because we have nobody out there. And Man United have targeted a right winger, as we know, for 18 months with no success. So
does
where
the
he
lack
would
of Champions
start,
League football put him off? Or guaranteed Champions League football? I know you're not out of the race at the moment by any count.
Yeah,
but...
I'm sure it'd have a massive dent on him. But United have signed better players than him, not playing in the Champions League. Let's not forget we signed Paul Pogba when we weren't in the Champions League and had no Champions League the season after. So it's not an impossible task, but it definitely hampers you.
Yeah, I mean, at the point you signed Paul Pogba, you hadn't been out of it as many years, had you? Like in like a 3 or 4 year spell. So I do feel like players will probably be a little bit more wary of that now, because it's not like you're knocking on the door in terms of securing 4th place. But there are a lot of things at United that offset that, aren't there?
Yeah, money being one of them.
The main one, you might argue. Where do you guys think Jadon Sancho should go? Let us know in the comments below who you're more aligned with. Doogie will read some of those out later if they are interesting, of course. You got your phone and your iPad out.
Yeah, I do. It's time for some halftime entertainment.
Enter the Matrix. Yeah.
It's time for halftime entertainment. So we do a little feature every live stream just to talk about anything but football for about 5 minutes. And this time I'm going to introduce Quiz of the Year. I've got some questions for you guys.
Lovely.
So, number 1. In early January, which country landed the first human-made object on the far side of the moon?
Russia.
Oh, good question.
China.
China. Pat, well done. 1 point to Pat.
Oh, we just go whoever goes first, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 5. No, this is the second question, but it's number 5 on the list.
Number 5.
Who announced he was leaving the National Television Awards after 9 years as host?
No idea.
NTAs.
This feels like something.
Buzz, is it Dermot O'Leary?
It's a good guess.
For some reason it says Pete. No, I'm reading. Dermot O'Leary, correct.
Oh my
Well
goodness.
played. Third question. A picture of which everyday object on Instagram became a global phenomenon by becoming the most liked post in
Egg.
online history.
Egg.
You spend
It
too much
is an
time on
egg, yeah.
Instagram. Well done, Joe.
This is
Really struggling to find the answers.
on the FD
Yeah, it's
versus
quite a long list. There's about 30, so I've got to scroll quite a long way.
on the FD versus EFD quiz. Joe was mops up on the online round. He's
Yeah,
literally
yeah,
glued
yeah,
to his
yeah.
phone.
The fourth question, or third question, I'm a bit lost now. In February, the North Korea-US summit was held in which country?
North Korea US summit. Didn't
Oh.
Donald Trump go and visit? Was it South Korea?
No.
Oh.
No, you're not going to hold it in South
I
Korea.
think they flew.
No,
to,
but he entered South Korea for the first time, didn't he?
Was it somewhere like Belgium?
No.
Was it China?
No.
What was
Oh.
the answer?
It was Vietnam.
Oh.
Or was it Donald Trump that went into North Korea and not Kim Jong-un into South Korea? That might have been a bit more contentious, yeah.
Who launched a legal action against the makers of Channel 4's The Jump after fracturing a vertebrae in 2016?
Oh, it was.
Vertebra. Vertebra.
It was.
I would have said vertebra as well. Was it vertebra?
Oh my.
Vertebrae is the plural.
Is it not vertebrae for one, anyway?
either way.
I can't think off the top of my head, mate. I do know the answer, but it's
Oh no,
poor
for,
from me.
for a singular.
Does
no,
anyone know
it's
the
for
answer
a
to
It's
this?
not Vernon K, but it's something like
If you know how to pronounce vertebra or vertebrae,
Yeah,
let us know as well.
what is
It
it?
was Beth Tweddle.
Beth Tweddle.
No chance.
Um,
What was Beth Tweddle doing? Is she a gymnast? Or is she
I
retired?
don't know who that is.
when Change UK, the independent group, was founded, who was its interim leader?
Oh, Chuka.
No.
Chuka.
No.
Oh.
Was
He
it?
was part of it, though.
Wasn't Anna Soubry, was it?
No.
Oh.
Heidi Allen.
Ooh, okay.
And the final one coming up. Who did the BBC Two viewers vote the most iconic figure of the 20th century following a series that asked the public to name the country's century's greatest figure? So last century's greatest figure.
Was it for the UK or for
For
everything?
the UK, I imagine.
Well, surely they'd probably say Churchill, wouldn't they?
No.
Is it? So the most. Is it
David Frost.
David
No.
Attenborough?
No.
Is
Bowie.
it Lizzie?
It was Alan Turing.
Oh,
Alan
who's
Turing.
that?
That's quite nice.
You know the guy that
Crack the Enigma
who
Code.
cracked the
James
Enigma
Bond.
Code
Yeah,
from
yeah,
that really good
Bletchley,
film. I
Bletchley
actually
Park.
really
I
enjoyed
actually
Benedict
think more the
Cumberbatch,
British
that
public.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
it. Alright, final question.
Following that.
Final question. Who made news headlines by separating from her husband Simon Konecki?
Ooh.
Diggy, this
This
quiz,
is tough.
mate. Okay. Very okay magazine.
Simon
at the moment.
Konecki.
Simon Konecki. Who's that?
She was famously heartbroken this year. Everyone's very
Adele.
excited. Adele!
Oh, it was Adele, yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't look so pleased. Obviously,
Yeah!
Really?
Heartbreak!
Mate, she
Yeah,
loves
dude.
it. She's looking at that
Yeah,
like
mate.
another album,
She's-
another number one.
She's literally monetized Heartbreak. She's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you
she
very
was
much for
skeptic
taking
now?
part with Diggy's halftime quiz show.
Just lost 800 viewers.
But back to
I enjoyed
the,
that, dude. So don't listen to them.
Thank you. But back to the football, because Bav Bev has asked, what do you think Bayern need to do to get back to the top of European football? Obviously, this can include players, managers. Who wants to go first? What do Bayern need to do? Because it's obviously no final since 2013 now.
I felt like you looked away there because you didn't want to answer the question, or were you just thinking?
I don't mind, man. Like, I mean, I think get the right manager. Like, I think they're going to go out next summer and try and get Erik ten Hag, which I think would be an excellent appointment. And then they need to continue to turn over the squad. They need a couple of midfielders because Thiago can't live forever. They certainly need at least one more centre back. But overall, they're doing a pretty good job. Like, they've managed to find Gnabry pretty much out of nowhere. He turned into Bayern standard pretty much overnight, and they did good work in the defensive half of the field next summer. So I would be thinking about a keeper. I'd be thinking about an all-action central midfielder who can ideally play as a 6 as well. And I'd be thinking about who's going to be my next centre forward. And I think if you get those and another winger, then you're in a pretty good situation. And if you look at, you know, for all the flaws in their squads, look at Arsenal and Man United. Like last season, we were saying these are really old, tired squads. And you know what? After a summer, like, yes, they still have significant issues, but they're much, much younger. They've managed to completely change their age profile. Now, Bayern can afford to do that while getting top players as well. So I think if they were to go and get, say, a Haaland or a Werner as the heir to Lewandowski, if they were to go and get a young keeper like a Donnarumma or whoever, like, for the long term, and then get one or two central midfielders, I think they'd be set for a long time. And the squad is still pretty good. Like, they still are the best team in Germany by the stats. So fair enough. Like, it's not going to be that hard.
Yep, fair enough.
Pretty
fair enough.
comprehensive.
Yeah, I think that's a very good answer. They've just been slightly unfortunate with
mate.
injuries in defence in recent weeks as well. I thought they were really unlucky, but against Bayer Leverkusen in the previous game they lost as well. They missed some gilt-edged chances, and Borussia Mönchengladbach killed them on the break with 2 late goals last weekend. So I don't think there's massive issues there. But yeah, get a top manager in.
And they still have the ability, don't they, just to decimate their rivals. If they want to, they can just go, right, I'm having Werner, I'm having the best
Sancho.
player. And they could just decimate all their rivals if they choose to. And it's the same with the manager. They could easily, I feel, in the summer just go, okay, we're having Nagelsmann.
I don't know. I think Nagelsmann turned them down originally. I don't think they can. I think Nagelsmann's one of the very few people they can't get at the moment.
Okay.
Maybe
but I agree with you overall.
They could
Yeah.
just-
Well, Tuchel's
yeah.
been on their short
They
list.
have that sort of ability,
Yeah.
don't they, just to decimate. And it's pretty grim.
And I feel like his relationship. I mean, I don't want to read too much into that whole Mbappe coming off the pitch the other day. I think it was 3-1 up and him refusing to talk to Tuchel. But I imagine if you're Tuchel, you get to the end of this year and the end of the season even, you've made no significant progress in Europe and domestically you've swept up again. The idea of getting out of there would be quite appealing. It doesn't seem like he's a sort of manager that really enjoys putting up with these prima donnas, these elite players and their egos, and they do feel he does feel like a manager that definitely would freshen Bayern's approach. Feels like they need that a little bit now, doesn't it, Bayern? Like you won't be able to clearly say what their philosophy is right now because Kovac was a little bit more of a pragmatist, and who knows about Hansi Flick? They're doing a lot more pressing under Hansi Flick, but you don't know whether that's just the upturn in new manager. Need to keep my place, or I see the potential to get back in the team like Thomas Muller. I'm going to do a lot of pressing sort of thing because they are 7th for the moment, aren't they?
They are indeed, although it is very tight at the top of the Bundesliga. But yeah, if you're joining us for the first time, remember to subscribe to EuroFootball Daily. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a Total Football. We'll be back in February for the knockout stages after this round. Mohamed Almat and Daniel Payne have both asked simultaneously, seemingly, do we have any dark horses for the Champions League this year? Someone that you wouldn't necessarily expect to go far, but maybe not to win it, but to go far in this competition. Anyone got any
What do
suggestions?
you think, Joe?
Not massively.
Are we watching the biggest one, Salzburg, if they were to
Probably
do
not.
something tonight?
I mean, they could go out
You could
tonight,
go for
couldn't
their
they?
Red Bull Brothers
I have
Leipzig as
here.
well.
I have
They're,
here.
they're, they're currently going out. So I think it's, other than Ajax, which is a total shocker last season, it's the same boys that are every year, so I don't think so.
I feel like Leipzig could go quite far this year if they got the
Yeah,
right
that's
But
draw.
don't you think they'll prioritise the Bundesliga? Oh, it's a good...
I think they've got a really good squad actually, so I
Here's a
feel like,
chance.
they
Throw it
could.
in.
They could go deep in the Champions League. Alisson really needs a haircut.
Yeah, he looks terrible. Whereas this guy, Hwang Hee-chan, is an absolute piece. He looks incredible. You've seen his cheekbones; they're unreal. I think that it would be fun if a Leipzig kind of went pretty deep in the Champions League. But other than that, I mean, Atleti are always there, aren't they? And technically, you could argue that Bayern would be dark horses to win, given that they've sacked a manager and they've got just some bloke no one's heard of in charge.
Yeah. I really hope Inter Milan can go quite far as well. If they beat
I think they're
Barcelona
gonna go out,
tomorrow,
aren't
if they beat Barcelona tomorrow, but Barcelona got the El Clasico coming up quite soon and they're already through, so they might rest some players. But I quite like Inter Milan to go through. I'm really enjoying watching, particularly their duo up
Bayern
front
have
this
the
year.
outstanding player as well, don't they, in the Champions League at the moment, in
God,
Lewandowski.
100%.
I think they've scored 21 goals as well. I don't
Yes.
think any other side has scored more. So they are really fun at the moment in Europe to watch, Bayern. What's the complexion? I might be throwing you under the bus here, dudes, but of Atalanta's group.
I think Atalanta...
Can they still get through? Because they've got their act together in recent weeks.
Yeah,
haven't
I
they?
think they're on 4 points. I'm just doing off the top of my head, so let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. I
I'll
think
get it
Man
up,
City are
dudes.
very much... Man City are through. Dinamo Zagreb and Atalanta are quite similar. No, sorry.
Shakhtar.
Shakhtar and Atalanta are on a very
Shakhtar.
similar level, and then I think Dinamo Zagreb are in 4th. I might have just got that completely wrong.
Atalanta are bottom.
Can they still?
Atalanta, they can still qualify.
Okay.
There's 2 points separating 4th and 2nd.
Yeah, but
That was a very good effort from you, though, mate.
they've
Oh, I
also...
tried my best.
But they also,
That was
like
fantastic.
the 4-0
See you
loss
later.
against Zagreb didn't help.
Yeah, that was the opening game,
things.
though, right?
Go on.
Oh, another one! They're appealing for a handball, not given.
What happened there?
He's saying it hit his stomach, the referee. Haaland had a strike from about 6 yards out, and Salzburg appealed for a handball, but the ref said it hit his stomach.
I mean, look at this though.
Same as the first half, it's so open.
Yeah.
Mwepu is constantly the only guy in midfield.
Oh, here we go!
Oh,
he's blazed it over.
Salah!
Mo Salah's missed another sitter.
Unbelievable
The
ball
perfect
from the
opportunity.
left-hand side.
The perfect opportunity to break the deadlock there, and that's a great ball from
He's
That's
off.
Mane.
I think he'd be giving us off. I think if that had gone in.
Mane, and it's just gone over
Does
the
it
crossbar
bobble?
from
What
Salah.
happens? How has he put this over? Oh, might have taken a little bobble. I'm
Maybe
not
he
sure.
just wants to add he's won the Champions League. Maybe he wants the Europa League. Because whoever goes out tonight is going to be favourite to win the Europa League.
100%. Probably with Inter as well if they drop out as well.
I think Salzburg.
Ulmer is, apart from that ball that's gone a little bit wayward, Ulmer, Salzburg's captain, is playing really well tonight as
Which
well.
number's Ulmer?
Number 17, so I think he's the left back, isn't he? He's putting a few very decent balls down the line.
Trent got absolutely toasted like twice there. It was great.
Yeah,
this is so fun. Like I love Salzburg.
game.
How can you not enjoy this?
Really could do with a goal though for a stream title.
Yeah, for sure.
Could do with Liverpool going out. That's a come on.
There'll still be a bit of drama either
That's
way.
exactly the way that Van Dijk makes every single
Lads,
challenge.
we've got we've got a good question in from Osama Tayeb, who asks, if Ernesto Valverde were to be sacked, who do you think should replace him?
Firstly, I don't think he'll be sacked. I don't think Barcelona have sacked a manager mid-season in something like 10, 11 years.
Top of the league.
Would be very surprised if he gets sacked mid-season, despite the fact he's not good enough for that club. But if they get, it'll be a random Spanish name. It just will be. I feel like how many times? When was the last time they hired a manager that wasn't Spanish?
But even he got chased out of Real Betis by the
It
end.
would be
Van
Tata
Gaal?
Martino.
Tata Martino.
Tata Martino, Argentina.
Argentine.
He felt Spanish.
What are you saying?
You mean a
there?
Spanish speaker?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like,
I know what you mean. Valverde was pretty random.
I mean, I feel like they kind of would want Ten Hag, but
I don't think
they'll get Ten Hag unless Bayern decide they don't want him.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people were expecting Luis Enrique to be appointed when he was as well. So I'm kind of with you. It probably will be someone either attached to Barcelona in the past. I keep on seeing Ronald Koeman always linked with that job as well.
I'd be really surprised.
Which would be very surprising indeed. But I think probably the
Great
best.
ball, Minamoto.
Oh, it's a great challenge.
Firmino,
Who
brilliant.
was that?
Little bit
Firmino
there.
coming back at the edge of the
I
box.
don't
Lovely.
know, man. I don't really like challenges like that.
Hwang and
That
Minamino
was a bit dirty.
Hwang and Minamino have got a really good understanding, haven't they?
do,
They're
indeed.
pretty devastating
They do
together. Haaland looks a little bit disjointed actually out of that forward line at the moment, but probably just looks disjointed because he's absolutely massive.
Oh,
Salah.
Salah's in.
Oh!
Oh, what a save! Brilliant goalkeeping.
Stankovic, what a piece of goalkeeping. What happened there?
That is
Oh,
actually
Salah went
sensational.
through one-on-one, tried to take it around Stankovic. It's not Salah's night so far. He's missed 2 gilt-edged chances, tried to take it around Stankovic, and just class goalkeeping, to be fair.
He's having a fantastic game.
Stankovic
actually.
is playing really, really brilliant.
I mean, Alisson's having a pretty good game as well.
great touch by Haaland. Haaland in!
Oh!
Massive chance for Haaland.
Why didn't he just hit it?
Oh, come on, he got decent amount of power on that, but wayward doesn't find
Brilliant.
the
We
inside.
all expected him to hit it like here.
Yeah,
didn't we?
brilliant
Now.
touch. Takes it slightly too
Just
wide.
that extra
He
touch.
does just drag it too wide, and it just goes outside the post. But Jesse Marsh, encouraged,
Oh,
He's
what a
loving it.
chance.
encouraged by what he's seeing, fist pumping on the sideline.
That's
What a piece of
phenomenal.
goal!
Well, you have to
great
say
bit
that
of
it's not
goalkeeping.
brilliant by Salah. Doesn't
it's
take it quite
It's
wide
not.
enough.
Though it does
he?
kind of bobble over the defender's leg, doesn't it? It's a
Is
little
Mane all right?
Stankovic has been so quick off his line,
He's
though,
fine.
hasn't he?
He's absolutely
He's
fine.
fine.
It's been
Yeah,
great.
clearly.
Yeah, that was really good goalkeeping.
That's
But I
ridiculous.
was saying that Alisson made some good saves in that
Cooking.
first half as well. I
Yeah.
think Salzburg got 6 of their 7 efforts in the first half on target. I saw at half
Stop
time.
cheating,
So
Sadio.
fair enough.
Sadio Mane just been put there to clarify for not being too happy with the referee.
Oh, what a chance for Haaland, though. I don't know why he didn't go across the keeper as well. Felt like he was trying to catch him out.
Yeah,
Yeah, Alisson might have had it covered.
I feel like he took one touch too many there. You expecting him just to put a thunderous strike in when he first latched onto the edge of the ball, end of the ball even. Sadio Mane, what's he not happy with?
This is
What
not good.
happened?
If you're on the floor saying that you've been hurt by an opposition challenge, then when the ref doesn't give it to you, you shouldn't get up, run over to him and shout at him.
That sounded like
Makes
pretty-
you look like a tit.
That looked like pretty choice language as well.
Yeah,
so I
it
think
didn't take a professional
I think
lip
he
reader to see
deserved
what he said.
deserved his booking there, Dukes.
Yes.
comments?
Kiran Prakash Hari has asked this question for about half an hour. Sorry, Kiran, that I haven't got to you sooner. He has said, do you think Frankie and Arthur will become the best midfield duo in the world? I mean, they've started pretty well. What do we make of this question?
You've had made quite a few observations about Arthur in recent weeks and sort of his qualities and what he lacks. Do you think they're a really good midfield pairing? Of course, Barcelona don't necessarily have midfield too, but can you see them being the spine of the midfield for the next 5-6 years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing about Arthur is he does need to add more creativity. Like, if he's not going to defend at all, like he's a great passer, he's a great dribbler, or at least he has been this season. But he doesn't actually create an awful lot. Like, he's a good player at stitching things together. But that means that he kind of needs to be the most attacking player in your midfield three, which means you need somebody else behind him who can do a bit more all-round stuff. But yeah, they're a really exciting midfield pair to have. Like, it wouldn't trouble me how little defensive work Arthur does if I had the other personnel, right? But if they were to add, say, Fabian Ruiz to that, I don't know. If they were to add Fabian Ruiz to that, it would be a great midfield three. But I'd also sort of think,
It might also limit Frankie de Jong going forward as well.
No, not really. Like, because Frankie never is like getting into the final third. Like, he's doing defensive work and ball progression from deep. Like,
He was when Suarez scored that bloody goal, mate.
he doesn't really do any of it.
Great ball.
Does he? Like, I don't know. If I had Fabian Ruiz, there'd be a part of me that'd be like, why is Arthur in this side? Like, what's he adding?
Well, if you had Fabian Ruiz on that side, I feel like you would need not an outstanding defender, because Barcelona are still going to have 60% of possession, aren't they? But certainly a ball winner in the way that Busquets has been. I mean, when you adjust his stats for possession, he is making like 3-4 tackles, isn't he? And I don't see that with Ruiz or Frankie de Jong. Like, Frankie de Jong makes
quite a lot.
He makes a couple though, doesn't he? But I'd like to see Frankie de Jong. Like, you don't want to task him with winning the ball back. I feel that puts limitations on the player he could be.
That was kind of what he was tasked with at Ajax. Like, he was doing the most defensive work in the midfield, but he was doing 4 tackles and interceptions a game. Like, in a side that was extremely ball dominant. And you had Fabian, who does the same. Like, Arthur doesn't do anything. Like, it's about 1.5 tackles and interceptions a game. Those are like Messi numbers. Like, that's my concern. Like, Frankie, it's what Frankie's done for most of his career. Like, be the deepest midfielder. It depends how you determine that role. I mean, like, we talk about N'Golo Kante, right? He's a defensive midfielder who doesn't just like sit at the base of midfield. I think you can play the role in a different way, maybe.
Russian it is.
Yeah,
Salzburg.
I mean, either way, it's going to be Frankie de Jong plus 2 others, isn't it? In the next 5 years as Busquets is aged out, and whether we determine that Arthur is good enough. I certainly think he is. I'm a huge Arthur fan. He's a wonderful footballer, at least when he's on the ball. Yeah, maybe off the ball, he's areas to improve. What do you think, Diggs? I want to say European football expert, but that's what Smithy says to me when I'm on Football Social. So just as someone that has an interest in European football.
Yeah, I've got a big interest in European football. But yeah, I think Frankie de Jong has he got a lot of criticism in his first couple of months. I thought pretty unfairly. Whereas I feel in the last couple of weeks, you've really seen him adapt to the Barcelona system, what Valverde wants from him, much, much better. And I actually think Arthur has gone under the radar too. He's added a few goals to his game this year. That was one of the criticisms, that he didn't get into the dangerous enough areas often enough. But in terms of ball retention, in terms of his passing range, I think he is a Barcelona player. And I think they're the perfect duo to take Barcelona forward. I think the player that they need to replace, more so is probably Busquets. In the long term, and someone that I'd probably look at is Brozovic for that Busquets role.
That's a really, really good shout.
I can see him working really well. Thank you, Pat. I can see him working really well at Barcelona, and he's been absolutely phenomenal for Inter Milan again this year. And it's been about 3 years in a row that he's played at this level. So I think Brozovic to Barcelona, and then that midfield 3 is pretty complete as far as it goes in my eyes, anyway. So yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
Nice.
Guys, Messi Messiah has asked, what are you most excited for in football terms going into 2020? Obviously, end of a decade, start of a new decade for all of. I don't think he means work-wise. I think in terms of football. Just
before you guys answer, so Dejan Lovren has had to come off, and Joe Gomez is on. Joe, did you have an answer for this question? It's quite a big one. What are we looking forward to in the next decade?
In 2020.
No, keeper's a mess.
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
it's a goal!
Well, of all the chances...
And there we have it. The keeper lets himself down.
Of all the chances both teams have carved out, one of the more straightforward attempts we've seen tonight. The goalkeeper just caught in a bad position. I'm not sure who's clipped that ball across for Keita on the left-hand side, but it's a simple header. No one's on his line.
Goalkeeping.
I mean, we're giving Stankovic a lot of credit.
He's been great all game, but he has absolutely no need for him to come out in this situation.
Another beautiful
Robertson,
crossfield from
huge crossfield.
It's kind of overhit, but where is he going there? He's like, it's horrible bit of
He doesn't need to. He's got two defenders in his vicinity. He doesn't need to make that challenge.
And the header doesn't even need to be that good. It's just the defender's coming across to block it, and he's just put it on the other side of him. It's like a trickler of a header in.
Whoa, but almost
Stankovic has let himself down, and he's let Salzburg down slightly there.
Crazy
having played so well for the first 56 minutes, Naby Keita gives Liverpool
and that bit of goalkeeping probably sends Salzburg out of the competition.
Yeah. Although, he's kept them... I want to say kept them in the game because they've been very competitive, but he's done very well up until now. Let's see what they can. Let's see what they can.
Haaland's in.
they
Because-
can do in the last
Good
30
touch.
or so minutes. Great touch from Holland. That was Naby
Why did
Keita's
he rush
first,
it then? That ball was
first goal
so
in the Champions
rushed
League
by number 14.
Yeah,
this
because-
term as well.
So
Because-
rushed by scissors and
It
bobbles.
was like, yeah, because Salzburg need to win this to go through, so it will make for a potentially pretty exciting final 33 minutes because they cannot sit back, otherwise they will go through to the Europa League. And it'll be a shame to lose
Oh,
them
no,
to the Europa
keeper's
League.
had
But here we
another
go.
nightmare.
Stankovic is out again. Salah's through.
What a
Oh my days! What a goal!
What a finish!
He has finished that from the byline.
We've just had to look at each other for confirmation there. So it's 2-0. Salah's shot did go in. I think everyone's expecting that to hit the side
is
net
the
on the
keeper
right hand
doing?
side. Keeper feels like he has to come out again. It's more understandable in that situation than previously, I guess, with Stankovic. But he's having a stanky 2 minutes. That's for sure.
I think in terms of finishes, that's one of the best of the Champions League so far. That angle was pretty impossible. Salah was almost off the pitch. I cannot wait to see the replay of this again.
Goalkeeper has had 2 minutes of absolute madness.
It's so disappointing.
Like, this is not the greatest bit of defending here.
It's a lovely ball from
Like,
Henderson.
that's
but
poor.
Who was that?
It is poor.
No
But how much
need.
danger is there going to be, realistically?
Yeah, he's travelling away from
Wow.
goal. The finish is outrageous.
It's
by
about
Salah.
3 metres from the byline, just curls it in. It's a lovely curled finish into the bottom corner.
It's just incredible bit of finishing.
Is
But
that,
the keeper-
is that Christensen that's not been able to head it back? And Mo Salah, with his right foot, has managed to
Yeah.
find
Incredible finish.
the right hand side of Stankovic's goal. 4 goals in 6 for big Super Mo.
And that is game over.
That's Liverpool
so
3.
I'm going to turn this around now. But that is horrible. 2 minutes to keep. He's been playing well up to
I'm
this
not
as well.
suggesting that Salzburg will go through, but I just want to point out that they were 3-0 down at Anfield and brought it back to 3-3. So
I like it, the eternal optimist. Someone
There-
needed to say it.
there
didn't.
could
Not
be
that
there
it's
could
dangerous,
be
like
more
that.
no they haven't, but there could be more drama in this game.
Liverpool
But
are just going to go pure.
what a
long ball
few
now.
minutes.
It might be a
But yeah.
combination. I think it might be a combination of Jurgen Klopp wanting to rest key players now as well. I mean, seeing it was a dangerous scoreline in football, isn't it? You hear a lot of professionals say that it's the most dangerous scoreline, so on and so forth. But he's got to be thinking about conserving Salah or a Firmino or a Mane.
Might run away with this now, Liverpool.
And that might play into Liverpool's hands.
What's that Gini Wijnaldum? Really nice pickup in the middle of the pitch.
Do you know what I will say? This pitch is awful.
Yeah, it's so
The
bobbly,
pitch
isn't it?
is so bad.
I nearly criticised it earlier, but then I
What
thought
is
it
this
seemed
keeper
petty.
doing? Keeper's having a
I think
nightmare.
that's the right decision. You've got to he might have got a shout from his left back saying he had Salah, like because Salah's not getting to this.
But the pitch, yeah, just to come back to it, absolute quagmire. It's like a Sunday league pitch. Terrible. Don't even know that's
Yeah, no, it is a word. I just keep on thinking of Quagmire.
horrible pitch.
Right, Terry Williams. It seems a bit of a
Says-
weird question when we're just watching, Champions League football unfold before us. But he's asked, of all the Premier League teams struggling for form, who do you see are the most likely to turn it around? So I'll put Arsenal, West Ham, Everton in the mix. Who do you guys see?
Well, looks like West Ham are going to stick with Pellegrini,
At least until the weekend.
which is an interesting one. Thought that might have been the end for him last night, but nevertheless, he retains his role. I think them and Everton have got the best squads, so it's going to be one of those two, I think. Because I won't have put like Arsenal in here because I think they are slightly above that level. Like,
Yeah.
Everton are in a relegation scrap. Arsenal probably aren't.
This is becoming a bit one-sided now.
But yeah, I would say Everton.
God.
I don't think Slam Dunk the Funk will get it on a permanent. I'm really interested to see who they bring in. If it is Unai Emery, I actually think that's quite a good appointment.
Yeah. I don't mean to test anyone, but does anyone know who Everton have this weekend?
Man United.
They've got Man United. Right,
Man
blimey.
United at Old Trafford.
That's suddenly turning into
I mean,
quite a
their,
juicy
their
game.
run is really not appealing for any new manager coming in, and that's why they've given it to
What is Salzburg
Duncan
losing?
Ferguson.
Yeah, don't they play? I think they play Leicester and Arsenal and maybe Man City as
Yeah,
well.
They're good though, Everton.
they're
They're
I
unlucky
feel
against
like
Leicester.
Salzburg put an awful lot into the first half, and a few of their players look like they're tiring, particularly in midfield. I mean, that front three is still pretty. Looks like he's still got a fair amount of energy, but look at this.
Oh,
now.
Keeper's
God.
off again.
He's got to it this time.
Yeah, he's done
Stankovic
right there.
finally comes out to avail. But yeah, the pace is starting to slow down a little bit. Liverpool are in control of this game, it would seem.
Yeah. Sam Sloth has asked, should Marsh be the next US men's national team coach? Let's not answer that. Where should Jesse Marsh go next?
The national team one
That's
is
a
a huge,
massive
it's a huge
step down.
downgrade.
Exactly, yeah.
Huge step down.
Exactly. So, yeah, not to the US, Sam Sloth, but what do you guys reckon? Where should he go next?
They've made some
Brilliant,
really
like
weird employments.
Bundesliga, something like that. I
Yeah.
mean, previously, a few years ago, you'd have said, "Oh, this is the great next guy for a."
Why didn't he slip him in
I
then?
have no
Had
idea
to
why he
slip
did
him in.
that. like you'd say that this is a great guy to be at Southampton. Post Pochettino, post Koeman. It'd be a massive step down to become manager of the US men's national team. Like, he's at a really good European side. The next step is to a better European team.
I mean the quality of the managers that they're appointing at the moment, anyway, the national team is odd, isn't it? Like they are appointing people from the MLS as well. Was it not Bruce Rioch? Was it Bruce Rioch?
I mean,
Bruce Arena, sorry.
Bruce Arena.
He's not the coach now. I can't remember the name.
I just made up a guy there.
Coach sounds quite interesting.
He was there. In recent memory. Where should Jesse Marsh go? I think he's probably where he needs to be for the next couple of years, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose if
only been there 4 months, and
if Gladbach, if Marco Rose leaves Gladbach, can see him going there. If Nagelsmann, I read today that his dream job is Barcelona. I mean, every coach's dream job is probably Barcelona, but Leipzig would be a great move for him next. But I don't think there's any rush. I think, as you guys say, he's progressing really nicely in Austria. Nagul Gupta has asked, do you think Klopp will stay if Liverpool win the Premier League this season?
Yeah, definitely. He's building.
Do you think he'll extend his contract at the end of? I think it's at the end of next year.
Yeah. He's not. Why would he leave? Why on earth would he leave?
He's the best club in Europe right now.
Yeah, the only job that can tempt you away is like a Barcelona or a Real Madrid, isn't it? If one of those two came in for you.
Maybe Bayern Munich, if you felt like that they were gonna.
But don't you think if you're Klopp, you thought, I've done the Bundesliga, I've won the Bundesliga, I've won the Cup, I've got to a Champions League final whilst with the club in Germany.
I can't see him going to Italy either. I think Real Madrid or
Bayern
Barcelona
probably
maybe.
can't pay him as much, or maybe they can, but close to Liverpool. Whereas I still fancy it's impossible. It's still very hard to say no to Barcelona or Real Madrid.
It feels like too much of a culture shift at Barcelona. I could see him more so at Real Madrid than Barcelona.
Maybe.
Like, as in, the managers have to bend their will to the demands of the Barcelona way, and Jurgen Klopp certainly isn't that kind of coach, is he?
Yeah.
Like Valverde, it feels like he was employed because he was a bit more malleable, like his ways were a bit more adaptable. But yeah, I could say Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. What about yourself, Pat? Could you see him anywhere else if he wins the league? Like, could you see him going, staying?
What about replacing Pep at Man City?
I think he'll stay.
Wow, Duke.
Outrageous claim.
Chucking a bomb.
I'd have
in
him at
there.
United though.
Devil's advocate. Imagine if he went to United. There'd be riots in the northwest.
If he was to leave, though, where would you like to see him?
I think Real Madrid would be interesting. I'd like to see Real Madrid play modern football for once. They basically haven't had a cutting-edge manager since Mourinho, so it'd be quite fun to see them play like an attractive pressing style. They're still pretty behind the rest of Europe in that regard, as is La Liga. So, it'd be quite interesting to see that, I guess. But I don't know really. Like it just feels like everything's really nicely set up for him at Anfield at the moment. I wouldn't go to Real Madrid where people, having gone from like a cutting edge transfer system to what is basically a mess and a kind of billionaire's pet project at Real Madrid. I don't know why you do it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think he's probably. I think he's got another 2 or 3 years left him at Liverpool, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Easily.
Having thought that Salzburg might go into fifth gear here, Liverpool are actually controlling this quite nicely.
Klopp could feasibly, he could go on an incredible run with Liverpool here. Like, if Pep falls out of the league and decides he's going to leave in the summer, Klopp could have free reign of this league title for 3-4 years. Like, Liverpool are the outstanding team. That's with Guardiola.
I think that's a bit of an overstatement.
Oh no, sorry, I thought that was in.
I think that's a bit of an overstatement.
Wow.
There are too many guys who are going to age out in the next in kind of 3 years' time. Whereas you look at a side like Chelsea, whose stats don't actually look all that different to Liverpool's this season. They look pretty good, and they're going to improve a lot. Like there are so many reasons to think Chelsea are going to improve, given how young their 11 is. But I do agree that like he could probably rack up 3 titles in a row or something if Pep goes at the end of the season.
But if they continue to buy,
Put him in. It's such a
too
shit.
far behind.
Really laboured ball from Wepu there, but is that Hwang straight
awful
at
pass.
Alisson?
I
really
remember that was
disappointing.
in the midfield.
That was a big opportunity.
It looked like
Terrible.
Salzburg were through there, but like we said, Wepu with a really laboured pass.
was through. He was.
Hwang had to shoot from about 25 yards. I think you could definitely put up a little mini dynasty. What was it?
If he keeps on signing this effectively as well, because it's not just.
Well, it's not him, is it?
Well, you'd imagine he'd have quite a big say.
He has a say in it, but it is like it's a backroom thing at Liverpool. Like they started doing this before he was there, and you know.
Liking Instagram posts mid show, unbelievable.
What was it of?
I hope it was something complimenting Football Daily.
It was
off me.
It was a VYB notification.
Unbelievable.
I do think that the benefit of having Jurgen Klopp is that he probably views this as his pinnacle, right? Because he's been at Dortmund, he's been at a massive club already. So I guess there's not that element of like needing to prove myself in multiple divisions or kind of getting bored of being in the same landscape for too long. Like this is his like what's it called?
Magnum opus.
Magnum opus, yeah.
Quite an exciting change this for Salzburg. Patson Daka is really highly rated and he's having a great year for Salzburg. He's a striker, I think. So
going up top with Haaland.
Yeah, going up top with Haaland. He's Zambian and was picked up a couple of years ago from Zambia with Mwepo as well. So it just shows Red Bull's scouting network knows no bounds.
I didn't know Mwepo was from Zambia.
Yeah, I think they both are. They're a great little duo for the future.
They're doing a really good job of kind of highlighting a lot of African talent, actually.
100%.
The Red Bull group.
Yeah, I mean, look at Mane, Keita before them as well.
Salzburg are struggling to
and
play
then the
out,
Malian
aren't
players,
they?
you know, Haidara.
Yeah.
Salzburg are really, really struggling to play out from the back at the moment. Liverpool have just kind of gotten pinned in, and the fullbacks are doing all sorts of damage. Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold's balls through the midfield are just outrageous.
And Robertson as well down the line to Mane.
Liverpool's passing this half seems to have really improved as well. There's very few going astray. They're controlling it really nicely.
That's why it's fifth foul.
Kunal Sinya has asked, should Real Madrid sack Zidane? Pat even. I know you've been quite actually impressed with Zidane this year.
This is by far Zidane's best managerial performance this year. Like, in previous seasons, they got very lucky to do as well as they did in the Champions League. I mean, they were good as well, don't get me wrong, but like this is the most flawed team he's had to work with at Real Madrid, and despite having an old midfield with not a huge amount of talent coming through there.
Put him in.
Oh,
what are they doing?
He's off now.
So poor. That's
Jesus.
Awful. It's absolutely awful. He had Haaland and Daka there, both available to be put in, and delayed it about 8 minutes before getting tackled.
Klopp's got to be thinking about bringing Salah off.
I think bring Mane or Firmino off. They're more like Mane in particular, just so crucial. He's only one yellow card away from getting sent off.
Fitness is insane.
He's only a yellow away from being.
That is true.
I think and also he's just so crucial. If he gets injured, you're through now. They ain't turning this around.
I think Shaqiri or Divock will arrive in the next five minutes, right?
Big Div's got to come soon.
Big game player, Big Div. Give Shaqiri some minutes as well, like.
He played the other day. He
did start the other day, but I think that was his first start this season.
His hairline's made a miraculous recovery.
Has it?
Yeah, it's looking really good.
Maybe one for the next hair transplant review.
One for the scrapbook for sure, mate. Yeah.
Hair transplant review was incredible.
Andros Townsend is in the chat, and Andros has asked, what do you make of Domenico Berardi's return to form, and who should go for him next summer? Off the top of their head, this is probably quite spontaneous for these guys, but Domenico Berardi is playing very, very well indeed for Sassuolo once again. He's been there. He's only 25, but he's been there for about 4 or 5 years of producing about 15 league goals combined, goals and assists per year.
Playing with Caputo as well up front.
Playing with Caputo, exactly.
They've got a really old spine, and he's definitely like the jewel in the crown, isn't he?
Unbelievable.
Has he been linked with anyone else?
I'm surprised he hasn't gone already, to be totally honest. I don't know whether he's ever been linked with a big move.
Well, he was linked heavily when he was like 20. The best season of his career was when he was very, very young.
He got a bad injury, but since coming back from that, I think he's been really consistent.
He's played all over the place.
Didn't he play in Division 2 as well?
Yeah, he's been with them for years.
Yeah, with Sassuolo. Haaland's not having the game we thought he'd have tonight. Is he, gentlemen? Joe, what just happened then? Because summed up his performance. Really.
I mean, I think he's getting a little bit frustrated. To be fair to Haaland, he's made 4 or 5 excellent runs and hasn't been fouled once by either Minamito or Hwang. Like, he's had some times when he's been isolated against Joe Gomez and they've just not put him in. So I think he's starting to get a little bit frustrated. Just got in behind and blazed one over the bar, but just looks a bit lost, doesn't he? Like, he looks a little bit lost.
That's Daka, right? Number 20 on the
ball's
ball.
not really ball's not finding him enough. Like, it's just sloppy by Salzburg. They look really sloppy at the moment, and feels like Liverpool are going to punish him again. To be totally honest,
well, they can have loads of defensive possession, can't they? Liverpool now they can just hold the ball around the back and wait till someone fouls them.
I reckon this will end up 3-0, and it will be a breakaway last minute rolling from Divock.
Which on the the strength of Salzburg's chances in the first half, it's just chance. It could have been very different.
Yeah.
It's just one of those games that have.
Mind you, Liverpool had some good
You did-
chances.
you did get-
True. Liverpool had some good
But
chances.
Liverpool
as well.
haven't got unlucky at any point in the last 2 seasons, basically. Like, Liverpool have been always really good, and they've never got unlucky, whereas, say, Man City get unlucky constantly.
But don't you think? I don't know if this is more of a philosophical question that like the best teams rarely are unlucky. Like they're just so dominant. Whereas I feel like Man City sometimes make a rod for their own back with the way they try and play at times.
That's definitely true.
Particularly with the style, well, at least the level of defender they've got at the moment. Like I feel like, could Pep slightly adapt it and offer them a bit more protection? Probably.
That's true, but that doesn't really affect Liverpool's luck. I mean, like, you can say that like the way City play means that they're going to get unlucky more often than not. Like that's entirely possible. Though it didn't happen 2 seasons ago, so it'd be weird that it's only started in the last season and a half. But Liverpool, we just haven't really seen them kind of, like dominate a side and not get the breaks. Like so far this season, for instance, with them going unbeaten, like have Liverpool this season been better than they were last season? I'd say no.
Great touch.
Have they been better than City were last season? I'd say no.
Oh my God, Dak is quick, isn't he?
He's really
That's
good.
serious.
Wow.
Great ball.
Oh, it's a great
Wow.
ball as well. Come on, you got to take this.
Good defending there from Robertson.
That's good,
Deflection goes over from Minamino.
It's a solid game,
I think
Robert.
he should probably do more than Minamino.
I think that's where probably people don't appreciate the genius of Pep, because his last 2 seasons have been lauded to the high hills, but that's where you talk about the luck and the sort of fine margins. You think about the likes of Jordan Henderson, or you can maybe see Fabinho playing centre back, but like Jordan Henderson or Wijnaldum playing centre back and still being in like league winning form. Like that is just something we've come to expect of Pep, that he's able to enact those really unorthodox tactical decisions, and that's probably why he's still a better manager, or still more adept at like plugging tactical holes in Jurgen Klopp, because like he's had a few injuries, right, but then he's kind of, I suppose Jurgen Klopp's really good at like getting more out of players with who we thought had limited ceilings. Like Robertson's come in and he's turned into a 10 out of 10 left back, and when he came in he was like a 6, right, just in really simplistic terms. But we haven't seen like anything really unorthodox from him, have we?
No, true. He's nearly another goal for
Bit
Firmino on the
distracted
left.
there, Firmino, yeah. almost.
He's definitely just got the best out of key areas and bought players for certain positions who have then played in those positions. Although we saw a bit with Milner last year playing a bit at left back, etc.
But that's more Milner than a manager,
But
right?
equally, you could make the argument that the players that he's bought through, okay, maybe Joe Gomez hasn't started so much this season, but towards the back end of last season, we certainly thought Joe Gomez was going to be an outstanding star, didn't we? When have we seen Pep do that? We haven't seen Pep do that.
Have we not?
I mean, not that I can think of.
Do you mean from the academy?
No. I can't think of one academy player who's utilised.
Sure,
Maybe
but people were
maybe
talking
I'm
about
wrong.
City needing to sell Sterling when Sterling came in, and he's made him a star. Like Gabby Jesus arrived from Brazil, and nobody knew
That's
who he
only at
was.
City though, right?
I just
Barcelona,
mean
that was
that-
obviously his whole game plan was that to start with, right?
Yeah, at City. Obviously, at
Yeah,
City.
just at City,
I'm just
okay.
talking about that sort of. We see how badly they're struggling at centre half right now. Is there not a centre half in the whole City
Well, Eric
academy
Garcia,
that
he
can't get a
clearly
game?
doesn't quite trust him. But then you see,
Are we ever going to see Phil Foden play?
Fernandinho, and you see, but it's very hard when you have a competitor of the level of Liverpool, right, to start like blooding youngsters. Then, like, I think most managers in the world would rather play. He did it with Javi Martinez, didn't he? Centre half at Bayern Munich. Would rather play a Rodri there than try and put a Garcia in there when every point matters. I suppose like that's the one of the
but
negatives of being at the sharp
I
end
would
of the stick.
I would agree, but I'd agree if that was working, but it's failing.
Well, the defence is, but
Yeah.
but what if say Foden's good enough but Garcia isn't? Like then it's a little bit of a different.
But you're never going to know if you don't try.
Okay, but that's a different situation. Well, but maybe he does know. Like maybe you see him train quite a lot, and you're like, yeah, there's
Jordan.
no way this guy's like near that level. And in that case, the Foden thing is kind of irrelevant, like because Foden's not getting in the team because the attack's still working, whereas Garcia might not be getting in the team because he's not good enough. Like this is not really a defense. Like they say Garcia is highly rated, and more importantly, like Pep also has to take blame for the fact that he's built the squad a particular way and they don't have enough centre backs. Like that's his fault.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like he hasn't done a great job of building that squad.
And
you could
actually,
argue.
like
Stay at that from Salzburg.
Here we go, 3-0
Salah's
potentially.
in, 1-on-1.
good recovery.
Great recovery, but he's still got it.
Who was that? Good recovery.
You've got so much time there. You don't need to just spoof it out.
Really good recovery from Ongweny. Mo Salah was through one-on-one, but Stankovic has ended up saving it. It looked like a fairly rudimentary save in the end. He's cut back in really well, Salah.
It's really weak shot.
And it's kind of straight down the keeper's throat. Just going back to that Pep Guardiola conversation, like you definitely like in terms of the transfers he's made, like coming into this season, like I certainly think. I don't know if they anticipated how detrimental it would be to the midfield as well, having Fernandinho at centre back. Like he's a decent enough centre half, but they've looked like much more defensively suspect, haven't they? As a result, like maybe that's just having Rodri injured at the same time, but yeah, in that instance they could have maybe done with another defensive midfielder as well. But there we go.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of sympathy with him as well because he could have kept Danilo, who's a perfectly able like utility fullback, not brought in João Cancelo. And bought us another centre back. So and then he said he said he couldn't afford another centre back. So that's just poor squad, management effectively.
Agreed.
And what has he said recently? The quotes about not being able to compete with the likes of Juventus, Manchester United, so on and so forth. Like,
did he try and
endear him to
I don't
anyone,
think that's
does it?
quite what he meant.
Did he try and mean sides that sit back and defend deep? Because I thought that made sense after the United game to be like, we're struggling to break teams like that down. But if he actually means like on a year-by-year basis not being able to compete with United, what was he talking about?
I think he means they don't have the tools to compete with a side like who are going to deploy a deep block. Like I think that's how you interpret it at first. But even then, like what?
Yeah, does seem
random.
Especially because they did. They had like 20 shots and 7 on target.
They scored 106 goals last season in the league.
Pep is a horrific loser.
Yeah.
Well, also what Pep says to the press should always be taken with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
It's like 99% bullshit. Like
Pass it to Haaland.
And that's fair enough. Like that's all right. Like a lot of what Pochettino and Klopp and Mourinho, all that they say to the press is bullshit as well. Like that's fine. You're allowed to say what you want to the press because the press doesn't matter.
So has Haaland come off, by the way? I missed this.
No, he's playing out wide a little bit more now.
Where is he? Are we sure he hasn't come off, Haaland?
Good question, actually. I thought I saw him wide just now, but maybe he has gone off now.
Didn't see it. If Haaland's gone off, let us know in the comments quickly because I think we missed one there.
Either way, he didn't have his best performance either way. He wasn't going to be one of the talking points. Has asked, how far can you see Wolves going in the Europa League this season? Obviously, I think they've got the second best unbeaten run in the Premier League at the moment behind Liverpool. I think they haven't lost since they got battered by Chelsea in
6
late
of them have been
September.
draws.
Yeah, true. But can we see Wolves being a potential, in the mix for the Europa League? Maybe a step too far, I don't know.
They're definitely a tough team to beat when they want to be, aren't they, under Nuno? But I just don't think they've got the attacking weapons to win it. I think they could probably set up and just draw games, but the group was fairly comfortable. And I think that they might well get exposed by... Like, Salzburg are going to drop into the Europa. I would back Salzburg every day of the week to beat them.
Yeah, me too.
And they didn't even finish that high above Braga in their group as well. I think there was a Slovenian team and maybe Wolfsberger from Austria as well.
So you could argue they'd be better off playing bigger sides who want all the ball. Like, the problem that that's kind of nice. That means Wolves can play the way they want to play. Like, if teams kind of come at them and they're used to having 60% possession in their own league, but I agree. Like, they're better, more talented, better coached sides in the. And also, it's always ridiculous in a way when people say like, "Can X side, like how far will X side go in the Europa League or the Champions League?" Because you're like, it depends who you draw.
Yeah.
Like there's no such thing as just this side is a semi-final worthy side. Like if you come up against the winning side in the second round, then you're probably going to go out. So I don't know, man. Like probably not that far, I guess is the answer.
Haaland giving a water bottle a pretty tough time.
Good ball.
Over by the side of the pitch.
Salzburg have been grim the second. Salzburg have been grim the second.
I think they just expended far too much energy in the first half, and like the distance between the midfield and attack has become fairly massive in the second half. Like the midfield are really camped, aren't they? Yeah. They're still too reliant on Jimenez to go far in multiple competitions or to sustain their top 10 ambitions in the Premier League, I think, and go deep in the Europa League. Like they brought Cutrone in, I thought he'd get more minutes, so he's looked fine coming on as a sub. But if anything happened to Jimenez, I would have
brilliant ball by Hendo.
Wow,
brilliant ball. Oh, lovely.
Oh, here we go.
No, it's ruined.
So some really nice.
Oh no, that hasn't gone yet.
It's not over. We'll describe it in just a second.
Hendo
started this, and he might finish it once more. Some really nice interplay there between Mane and Salah. It looked like one of them would score or one of them would at least shoot, and it petered out into nothing in the end. But this kind of a damning indictment of how easy this game has become for Liverpool. They're now passing it round in the 12-yard box. It's gone back to the halfway line. They're recycling play with ease. But yeah, if Jimenez gets injured for Wolves, I fear for them. I like Diego Jota. Moutinho's having a great season, but like how many games can a 33-year-old Moutinho play in central midfield without that affecting him? I just think they're a little bit threadbare to really prioritise going deep.
Yeah, I agree.
Who knows?
I think they've only got.
Would you not prioritise it? If I was
Europa.
Wolves, I'd prioritise it.
Yeah, because you're not going to make.
You're not going to make top 4.
You're not going to be relegated.
You're not going to get relegated. I would.
I agree.
If I was Nuno, I'd prioritise it. Like
Completely
I
agree.
find it weird these clubs that don't, like a Wolves. The best they can hope for is a top 8 finish.
The fans would love it as well.
And I'm sure that they would be delighted for monetary reasons to get back in the Europa League next season. But back yourself to get into the top 8. The league's so narrow this year that you could probably do
That's a
it
good
with
point.
a threadbare
Yeah.
squad.
That's a good point. And they've made it to January. They've made it. They're effectively through, aren't they? So they might reinforce with Europe in mind in January.
I just kind of think of a lot of these sort of level teams when they get into the Europa League, like Everton have done it a few times, Southampton did it once. That they should just go for it, man. This is by far the best competition they're in probably ever going to have the chance of winning, outside of some freak in the Premier League or a bit of genius from a manager or something.
Wang's got
So
great.
I think they should go all guns blazing for the Europa this season, Wolves.
Yeah, I
Wang's got a great change of pace on the ball, isn't it? I was going to ask you boys. So they made it to January. They've made it through to the next stage of the competition. Who do Wolves sign then? Like, have you noticed any kind of players at middling clubs in other leagues that you think could make a step up at a top 8 club in the Prem?
I think their sort of places they can upgrade is probably in defence, really, because their starting lineup in midfield and attack is pretty well settled now, and I think it's working actually pretty well. I've been slightly surprised that Jesus Vallejo hasn't had more minutes. Brought in from Real Madrid, hadn't played a lot there, but had a really good start. I think it was Frankfurt a couple of years ago. Yeah. Started really well started a few of their games at the start of the season, but hasn't been seen in quite a while. Maybe he's been injured, but I haven't seen him in ages.
Good squad option though.
But yeah, good squad option. So I'd look for maybe a couple of centre backs at least, or just a deeper squad. I think they've only got 21 men in their squad, so it really is quite thin. But off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of who would be in Wolves' price bracket of around 20 million.
I'd quite like to see an attacking midfielder that can chip in with the goals and see them become a little bit less on Jimenez. But that's not really how they play, is it? They certainly don't play with like a traditional number 10.
Yeah.
They need a midfielder who can add some verticality, though. Like, I think their midfield's pretty bad. Like, Moutinho's great, but Neves has had a pretty bad season. Like, he looks like he's like stagnated a bit, and Morgan Gibbs-White is promising, but still very young. And then Donker is like a nothing player. Like, so.
But he's been playing centre half.
He's a terrible player. Like, I'd rather.
He's terrible. He's versatile. Isn't
He's
he?
useless though. Like he's not. He's
definitely not used.
He's not a good defensive midfielder, and he's not a good centre back. Like, so I mean, I think they were linked with Kessié really heavily in the summer, and that would have been a really interesting shout for them. Like that guy who can get forward from centre.
Because Jota just runs that ball, doesn't he?
Though he's had quite a down season as well relative to last year. But Jimenez is good. Jimenez remains good.
They've been decent from set pieces though, right? That's kind of saved them this year a little bit.
Well, and Dharma Traore's had a couple of games which gave them probably like 6 or 7
Here's
points.
a weird one.
You didn't expect.
But if they're going to go to the next level, and I don't think anybody's going to sign him that's actually a good club, so I think they should go all guns blazing with Bruno Fernandes.
Nah.
Why not?
Because you can do better for that money.
But can you?
Play him.
He's not that good.
Come on then, Jimmo.
Oh, he's overrated.
Jimmy, not your best.
I just think that he is effectively like a William Carvalho, perennially linked with a top club and never gets the move.
Carvalho's
because he's overpriced. He's overpriced and he's not that good.
What about Bakayoko?
But is that their issue in midfield? Like you said, you wanted to see them with more of like a creative attacking midfielder. Like it'd be interesting to see them do that rather than go and get like a DM like Bakayoko. I mean, Bakayoko could be a good signing. Don't get me wrong, but they'd probably get.
Add a few goals.
That certainly doesn't allude to what I was saying earlier. But I was just thinking, like, who's kind of fallen from grace a little bit and is currently out on loan. And I was thinking of Bakayoko.
Well, Emre Can if he's
about,
available for cheap. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
What about someone who's been injured for quite a while? So probably not in January, but next summer we still talk about Florian Thauvin every summer, and no one ever goes for him. Like,
Painful.
Be interesting.
I think Florian Thauvin is the sort of caliber of player that doesn't seem like he's going to get to an elite club anytime soon, and maybe he would take a big payday at Wolves. And take them up to the next level of, potentially challenging for the Europa League places every year, not just in this one-off weird like Premier League campaign where there's a lot of weakness.
Although at the moment he might be thinking, right, Marseille are doing great under Villas-Boas. They currently find themselves in second after a little resurgence. Villas-Boas, by the way, getting an awful lot of credit in France. Saw a post-match interview with the Angers manager, and obviously they've been a team that have punched above the weight in recent times. Jeff-René Adelaide really excelling there before he went to Lyon. It's kind of why I know about them or read about them. But he was saying that he, from a management point of view, he's seen Villas-Boas do things that like not many other managers in the league have done. Like it was just really, really complimentary about him, and it was quite like odd to read in a post match, after he just lost, just being like, well, Villas-Boas is just doing really interesting things at the moment. And it looks like they're going to be guaranteed Champions League football if this run continues. So would he go to Wolves, where it's like, okay, maybe we'll qualify for the Europa in 6 months' time? Like, what, 27, 28?
I think he's 28.
Do you want to give up on Champions League football there? I think he's a decent profile of player, but it's just... And if Marseille were still struggling for fifth, then sure.
Yeah,
but,
no, I think you're probably right. Maybe he can have bigger ambitions. But we just said that last summer because he's been performing at a really high level for 2 years now and hasn't got a top move.
What about Bertrand? Is Bertrand Traoré still struggling for minutes at Lyon?
There's quite a few options they could go for at Lyon. Maxwell Cornet as well.
Cornet would be good.
Good forward option there. Can't remember the name of the other. Oh, it's not coming to me. But yeah, they've got numerous forwards that don't seem to play that much. So
second half's kind of gone on a little bit of a whimper.
Yeah,
a bit easy for Liverpool. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's been manageable for Liverpool, hasn't it? Anyway,
goal,
so we're coming up to 89 minutes. Get your questions in for Doogie because we'll carry on answering them 5-10 minutes after the final whistle blows.
Liverpool
on the attack.
Get onside, you're offside.
I'll be offside.
I think
No,
Mane's
I think
right.
Mane's onside though.
Get out of the
Leave
way.
it! Oh,
Get out of the way,
no!
Salah.
What are you doing?
Mane's going to be fuming with it. Doogie, other questions pouring in, and if people aren't subscribed, what should they do?
Yes, subscribe and hit that notification bell to never miss a Total Football. We'll be back in February for the knockout stages.
Block, by the way.
Max Abalou, or Max Abalou 79, has said, do you think Leicester City will be able to stay in the top four and in the Premier League? And how far do you think they could go if they do in the Champions League next year?
What do you reckon, Joe?
Are they top four nailed on?
Yeah, at this stage, because the rest of the league isn't good enough to catch them. But it doesn't mean they're going to be a long-term nailed on top four candidate. I think they'll get comprehensively picked apart in the summer, which is a shame, but it just happens, doesn't it? You can't fend off, sadly, the big boys. You can try your best, but at least two of those players will leave. And it is a job to replace them, and that job ends up probably costing you the next year's top four, which is a bit of a shame as well. But it won't mean they're nailed on. I think they will finish top four, and they'll be a pain next season in the Champions League. But yeah, I think sadly they'll get picked apart in the summer fairly comprehensively. That's my thoughts. Do you think they'll manage to keep hold of the boys?
I mean, I'm a little bit more positive just because of the project that's going on at Leicester right now, and I think they're going to get the players to buy into it. Like, it's a young squad. I think by the sounds of things, they're pretty impressionable. Like, Brendan Rodgers is already won them over. They're building a new training ground. He's signed a new contract. They've sold big, like the two, £70 million player, £80 million player. So they're in a very strong position financially. Like, I think it's a good place for them players to be, like from 21 to 24. Or Liverpool almost in there with Salah again for at least another year. Like, almost as to say, like,
I'll give you one more.
Can we go one further? But certainly, like, if like a Liverpool or a City comes in for those players, I think it's different than United and Chelsea. I mean, I really do. I think they can probably justify like holding the players back in that regard with the latter
But
teams.
if you were Ben Chilwell,
yeah,
and Chelsea came calling, who get top four, I think you force a move through.
I think you can convince him to stay.
Depends how long Rodgers is going to be there for as well. Like,
He's just signed a new contract, so you imagine another season at least. But I mean,
Yeah.
that
Who's
contracts
gonna come-
mean nothing to
and
him.
no one's gonna
If
come
you
in for
waste,
him.
yeah.
Who's going to come in for Rodgers?
I
Like
I
if
don't
he's
think-
like genuinely, like which top club would you go to over staying at Leicester right now? I mean, I don't think they'll get
Come on.
totally picked apart, like just because.
that is another example of their final ball. Sorry.
Daka.
They won't get
more
picked
sympathy
apart
then.
because if they sell one player, like they then have enough money to say no to other sales. So they can sell Chilwell and then say no to Ndidi, Maddison, anybody else. Like, so in that sense, like it's quite hard to pick apart a side like Leicester now because
When I say pick apart,
They-
I mean two sales.
yeah,
Ndidi
I
and
think they can
Maddison,
sell one and say no to the rest. Like, so I'd look at my team and I'd be like, who are we in the best position to replace? And it might well be Maddison. Like, I think you could probably find like another exciting attacking mid like more easily than you can find like a top class left.
As a quick question while we're on this topic from me, who would you least like to sell, Ndidi or Maddison?
It's a very good question. I think they're probably a little bit more. Oh, hello, Gini Wijnaldum might be through here.
trying to be a madness.
Weird pirouette in the box. I'll let you answer this, Pax. You're in the swing of things there. Like, who would you rather part ways with? Who's more digestible?
I really like Ndidi, but I don't think Ndidi's a special talent. I think he's a very good. I think he's a very good defensive midfielder. Like, he wins the ball a lot. That's all he does. He's not a plus passer. He's not a dribbler. Like, he's a very good player. But I think scouting for that sort of player is actually quite easy. Like, I'm not saying it's necessarily easy to get them, but like, you can scout players who profile similarly to Ndidi. But I don't know. Like, I mean, I think it doesn't necessarily matter. You see who you can get more money for, and you let that person go.
I wonder how Samaseka's getting on at Hoffenheim, because he was someone that profiled really similar to Ndidi. He's making like 7-8 into tackle interceptions a game at international level. He moved for nothing in the summer transfer window. Just thought of that now, but I inclined to agree to an extent. Like, I do think it'd be really, really hard to replace Ndidi, and I actually do think he is like an elite talent in his position. But you just, if in doubt, just keep the guy who creates chances and scores goals. Yeah. Like, that's the hardest thing to do in football, isn't it? They've got some outstanding. Did
I just see that? That Salzburg taking a selfie with Mane on the pitch.
But he must be a hero at the club A, Salzburg. He's made it. Trailblazer. I'm not sure what I think about that, to be fair. But
another one.
I'd rather keep Maddison. What about
Leave him alone.
Keep Maddison. Just keep Maddison. Because I just think Leicester, to match Maddison's output, I don't think Leicester can attract that quality of player.
They got a little bit lucky that they got Maddison for 20 mil.
To look at Maddison level numbers, you're having to talk about some of like the elite young creators in the whole of Europe, and I don't think Leicester can attract them. Yeah. Despite the fact they finished second this summer, I don't think you can go and get a Kai Havertz or somebody like that, or an Odegaard. It's not going to happen. So they have to scout amazingly well to replace him. Whereas I kind of agree with Pat. I think if you sell Ndidi, you could maybe just get an absolute demolition man in there.
But I do think, like, even if you make the side vastly inferior without Ndidi, but it's just not as inferior as, without Maddison. Because Maddison has made Vardy better in the last 18 months again, hasn't he? Vardy was kind of. You forget how he was on the bench for a fair few games under Claude Puel when they were trying to change the system entirely. I remember, what's his name? They call him Dimmy, don't they? Playing through the middle. I just think Harvey Barnes isn't as good without Maddison, and neither is Jamie Vardy. And Jamie Vardy's like one of their, like, without his goals as well. If you cut off his supply line, he's half the asset, isn't he? So
I think we're slightly underplaying Ndidi though, and like, I don't think Maddison would look half as good unless Ndidi was giving him the ball in such promising areas as well. And Ndidi pretty much controls that midfield from a defensive point of view. Well, alongside Maddison, who puts in a lot of defensive work, but does just an unreal shift. And look at Everton aren't the same class as Leicester, but look at the drop off of Everton this year without Idrissa Gueye. And I feel like teams look at what Leicester did without Kante. When you have an incredible defensive midfielder, which indeed he's probably in the top 3 in the league, along with Fernandinho and Fabinho, like, you lose that in a side of Leicester's quality, and I think
he's adding to his game as well.
Statistically, Everton look better this season, to be fair, and also than they did last season, and also, like, I understand what you're saying. Like, no one's saying Ndidi's not a good player. Like, but this idea that, like, he's somehow like an elite player, like, he only defends, and he's very, very good at it.
I think he's getting better.
He's very good at it. But people talk about. But I think being underrated is certainly not a problem that Ndidi has. Like, people love Ndidi, and like, he's a very good defensive midfielder. But I do feel like there are defensive midfielders who just destroy a lot. And you say he gets the ball to Maddison in promising positions. Actually, that's kind of Tielemans' jobs, because Tielemans doesn't really defend much. I mean, if you were to go and get a Bakayoko to replace Ndidi, I'm not sure that would even be a downgrade. Like, and I love Ndidi. I really love Ndidi. But all he does is defend. He can't dribble, and he can't particularly pass.
I would disagree with that latter point. Like, I think this season, when I've watched Leicester, he's really added to his game, like, a good because before it was below average, like a good vertical pass, and he's certainly more inclined to drive his team forward under Brendan Rodgers, whereas under Claude Puel, his heat map would have just been his own half. Like, how far advanced has he been this season? Like, he's been chipping in with a couple goals. Like, you've seen him arrive late at the edge of the box. Like, admittedly, he's not been super effective in front of goal, but he's been noticeably better. What is he, 23, 22?
Yeah, I think they're the same age, aren't they?
I think if his passing game continues to improve at this rate, then he'll be a very, very well-rounded player.
Anyway, as finished, by the way, 2-0 to Liverpool, so they've gone through as the top team in that group. Yeah, they've gone through top of the group. Napoli second, Salzburg fall into the Europa League, which I think they'll be confident of winning. If you're a Salzburg,
definitely.
I'll be thinking we're going to be we've won the Austrian Bundesliga at Christmas, so we'll just put all guns into.
Well, actually, you say that, but weirdly, when I was doing the prep for this show, they're actually only 2 points clear of a team called Lask, who have only lost 2 games. And they played the same amount, despite RB Salzburg being unbeaten. But yeah, I agree. They'll definitely win the Austrian Bundesliga. But surprisingly close. I don't know anything about Lask, but maybe a team to watch in the future.
Should we have a couple more questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Hesse Rodriguez has asked, which league outside of the Premier League have you most enjoyed watching this year? Or maybe let's just change that to which teams outside of the Premier League have you most enjoyed watching?
Well, Joe just exhaled. You did a one-on-one on Serie A. Has Serie A been your go-to league after the Premier League this season? Is that?
Yeah, I think the most boring league of the top 5 is almost always Liga 1. And then probably the worst after that is La Liga. The Bundesliga is always fun. Like, you see new players, you see new coaches. Like, people just like La Liga because they know there are the big clubs in it. And there are a couple of decent sides this season, like Real Sociedad. But the big sides are so dull right now that that's kind of balanced out. Serie A is just carnage. Like, Serie A is mayhem all over the place. This season, obviously, it looks like there's a legit title race. Atalanta is still incredibly fun to watch. Napoli haven't really got worse, but the rest of the league has got better. So actually now, like, there are a bunch of sides doing really interesting, weird things in Serie A.
I like Fonseca at Roma at the moment.
Yeah, he's an exciting manager. But the Bundesliga is almost always, like, the most fun. Because the Bundesliga is just, like, the future of football. You can see what football will be in 2 or 3 years watching the Bundesliga.
Nice. Abdel Adan has asked, who do we think is the most underrated manager? Joe, have you been impressed with someone like a Chris Wilder? Would you say is the most underrated manager in the Premier League?
Let's say he's the most underrated manager. I don't know whether he's underrated, Chris Wilder.
He's getting a lot of credit, rightly so.
I think he gets an awful lot of credit, and I think rightly so, because he has worked miracles, taking Sheffield United from what bottom? Were they bottom of League One when he took over?
Towards the bottom, yeah.
Towards the low end.
Crazy.
And then shot him up the divisions. But I don't think he's necessarily underrated. I think people are giving him more than enough credit.
He was at Northampton before, right?
Doing really well.
I think so. I don't actually know a lot
to go
of
from Northampton to the Premier League in like 4 or 5 years is absolutely crazy, man.
So yeah, I think he's kind of about the reputation he deserves right now. Probably one of the best English managers. So congratulations to Chris Wilder. I'm struggling to think of underrated managers.
In the Premier
really
League,
difficult because everybody's so hyped. You put together 5 runs, you're suddenly 5 games in a row winning. You're suddenly the best thing since sliced bread.
And if your team underperforms a bit, then you're shit. And if anyone says you're good, like if you say Hassan Hüttl's good, or if you say Marco Silva wasn't actually that bad, then people are like, "What? They're terrible."
Yeah.
Hassan Hüttl's clearly a pretty good coach.
So I think it's really hard to be underrated in the Premier League in terms of your managerial ability.
Maybe like Farker shouldn't be fired if this Norwich side go down. Like, you know, to kind of half answer your question, not extremely helpful, I know, but like he's done enough. He deserves to come up, take them back down. No significant investment. He kind of transformed them as well at Championship level, didn't he? But
yeah, definitely. I feel like on the continent, like Adi Huta's done a really good job this year. He's obviously lost Haller, he's lost Jovic, he lost Ante Rebic, and like they're not in the top 4 mix probably this year, but they'll probably finish around 6th to 7th, which is pretty impressive considering he's lost like 2 players that contributed about 40 goals.
That's a good point.
So I think he deserves a fair bit of credit. Pat, is there anyone else on the continent that you feel like maybe doesn't always get the credit they deserve? Maybe Gasparini or someone?
Or Montella's a good coach. Fiorentina have been on a bit of a poor run recently, but had a good start to the season. They again were playing like a strikerless system that was pretty fun. I'd actually argue Sarri. I think Sarri's doing a good job. I think that Juve are the best side in Italy. Like, I think they just simply are the best side in Italy, and I think they should win the league relatively comfortably this season, unless something bad happens, or unless Inter somehow miraculously find an extra gear. I think Inter right now are playing at the absolute top level they can. Conte's got them doing that, and I think Juve, without really betting in Ramsey or Rabiot, and with Ronaldo below top form, are still probably the better side overall. So that makes you think they should be better.
I just think that the wiggle room there for being like rated and underrated with Sarri is so small because of the caliber of player in the squad.
Sure, but I think people would say like nobody really wants to give Sarri credit for how good like Juve are, and I mean Sarri's had a really weird year. Like Sarri this year, like you could argue it started with the Kepa thing. Like Sarri's gone from being like one of the most exciting managers in Europe to everyone being like, isn't Sarri a bit of a joke? Like I think he's just a good coach, really. Like, and I think they have changed. When you watch them, they do look different, Juventus. So I think that he's a good manager.
Fair. Bringing it back to this game, CPUP9 has asked who was your guys' man of the match from this game. Just while these guys probably think of it, I've seen it a bit before. I think Robertson had a very good game at the back, and I'd probably give it to Mo Salah on the basis of that fantastic second goal. He missed some big chances in the first half, and it definitely wasn't his best performance in a Liverpool shirt. But I thought, getting on the end of that, it wasn't even a chance really in the second for the second goal. Has seen them through. Probably go Mo Salah, but I don't think it was a vintage Liverpool display.
Didn't have to be in the second half, did it? Really?
I think I would probably go Naby Keita.
Yeah.
I thought Naby Keita really controlled the game second half and started to show a little bit too much quality for Salzburg's midfield to keep up with. I think Salzburg's midfield struggled second half quite badly. So yeah, probably Naby Keita for me. But I also thought Trent had a really good game. Just those balls into the midfield are so dangerous. They really, really progressed Liverpool. And without that, I think they sometimes struggle. So I think Trent and Naby for me.
Yeah, sometimes hard to call in this sort of environment when you're kind of only half watching the game. But I certainly think someone from Liverpool's midfield, just because they wrestled control from Salzburg in that second half pretty quickly as well after the break. Like it was very, very frantic in the opening stages. So you could say that maybe they didn't quite have a foothold, the midfield as a unit in the opening 20 minutes, and that maybe could cost one of them man of the match. But yeah, Keita or Jordan Henderson looked very tidy in possession as well. But yeah, just kind of quite a good but boring team performance in the second half. Yeah. What about you, Pat?
I didn't really think there was an outstanding performer. I didn't think anyone had like an all-round good game.
Who were you most impressed with on the Salzburg side?
I thought Mwepu had a pretty good game. Stankovic had a great 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy watching Minamino and Hwang Hee-chan play together. Like they're technically so clean.
Yeah.
The way they can receive a ball just off their feet and then immediately start moving forward is pretty remarkable.
Hwang's change of pace with the ball as well is very, very good.
Indeed.
Is that it? Is that the final question? Should we wrap it up there, guys? Thank you very much for watching this instalment of Total Football. If you want to know when we're going live again, then keep checking Doogie's Twitter feed because he's on it like a car bonnet. That's it from us this week. Thank you very much. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.